Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me now, Rich?
Get right up on it.
What?
Lift it up a little bit.
It's not on.
Okay.
They're working on turning it up if they can.
Okay, one second. No.
He's running to get something.
Don't tap on it. Stop.
Why? That's how you check.
Because they are on.
They're not. They're not doing nothing over there.
Kurt. He's the director of public works.
I work with him. Kurt.
Johnny, we did the sign-up sheets on that table.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay.
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Is it not this one? Test, 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 test. Test, 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 testing. Hello? Was it getting louder?
Yeah.
Test, testing, testing. No. It's not getting louder. Is it one of those? Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2. Is that better? Maybe a little bit more. A little bit more. Okay, testing. Is that good?
Testing. Can you hear me?
A little bit
Can you
more.
hear me in the back? Okay. Turn it up. Yeah, we're good. We're getting the thumbs up. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll call the meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight to think about the future of Shawnee County. And I know the commission and myself, we all look forward to hearing your comments and taking those into consideration. So
Do you want?
we'll
sorry.
get to the...
So this is the agenda. Sorry, if you're ready for
Yeah.
welcome. Okay.
Okay, so welcome to the May 14th Planning Commission meeting. Thank you for your attendance and participation. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to gather information from the public to help the commission formulate recommendations. In order to ensure a fair and orderly meeting where everyone can participate, the commission requests that you act respectfully to everyone in attendance and follow the public hearing procedures. Speakers must speak from the podium and state and write their name for the record. All comments shall be directed to me, the chairperson. Second comments will not be permitted until every person has had the opportunity to speak for the first time. Comments should be concise and not unnecessarily repetitive. I think we're going to have 4 minutes tonight for each person to speak, so we'll cut you off. Do we have the red light? Yeah, so if you are speaking and we give you the red light over here, that means your 4 minutes is up. So keep that in mind. The chairperson reserves the right to establish a time limit, as I just talked about. The designation of a spokesperson for groups sharing a common point of view is encouraged. So if a group of you have the same point of view, only one of you needs to come up and share that. That would be appreciated. Clapping, catcalls, boos, and outbursts will not be tolerated. After the hearing has closed, additional public comments are not permitted. So we're not going to get into a back and forth. We're going to listen to your comments, and then we'll wait for the next person to come up and comment. So,
As a side note, sorry, mine's loud. There's a small table behind the podium where there's sign-up sheets. So when you come up to speak, as the person in front of you is finishing, go ahead and sign your name. Everybody needs to sign who speaks so that we have a record of who all was here and spoke for public comment, please. So there's a small table with a sign-up sheet and a pen back there.
Okay. We'll get into roll call and declaration of a quorum.
Do this one first.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Order. Okay, the order of the public hearing. The chairperson, I will call the agenda item. The planning department will present the staff report and recommendation. Commissioners may ask questions of staff. Chairperson will open the public hearing. Chairperson will call for public comments for and against. So if you've come to other meetings, we've done those speaking in favor and then a different section of those speaking against the topic. This time we're going to do it all together. So we'll have for and against up at the same time. The chairperson will close the public hearing. Commissioners may ask questions of staff and hold discussion. And then finally, commissioners may take action. Okay, here we'll start with roll call and declaration of a quorum.
Tyler Timbering,
Here.
Jeanette Johnson. Here. Rosa Cavazos.
Here.
Ken Corbett, Chad Depperschmidt, Chad Gerhardt,
Here.
Josh Greening.
Here.
With 5 members present, there is a quorum.
Also, I wanted to introduce staff members today. I'm Joni Fedani. I'm the director of the planning department, so I will be the one presenting staff reports. Jolie Charles is here doing the minutes and roll call and keeping track of all of the votes. Rich Eckert is also here somewhere floating around back in the back. He's the Shawnee County Counselor. And then also Kyle Edelman is up here with us at the table, and he's the Assistant County Counselor.
Okay, we'll jump to the next item, which is approval of the minutes. And Joni, do you want us to approve each meeting individually, or will one vote work for all of the previous meetings?
Let's just go ahead and do month by month, just in case
Month
there
by
are
month.
changes.
Okay.
It will make it cleaner.
Okay, we'll start with minutes from the August 14th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Motion by Jeanette, second by Chad Gerhardt. And do a roll call, yeah.
Chad Gerhardt.
Aye.
Tyler Timbering,
Yes.
Josh Greening,
Yeah.
Rosa Cavazos,
I abstain.
Jeanette Johnson.
Yes.
With 4 in approval, the items for August 14th are approved.
Thank you, Jolie. And next will be, do I hear a motion to approve the September 11th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
September.
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
Who had the motion?
Chad.
I do.
Chad made the motion, Josh made the second.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
Rosa Cavazos,
Abstain.
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Tyler Timbering,
Yes.
Chad Gerhardt.
Yes.
With 4 members in approval, the September 11th meeting minutes are approved.
Thank you, Jolie. And do I hear a motion to approve the November 13th meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Second.
Jeanette motion, Chad Gerhardt is the second.
Okay. Chad Gerhardt,
Yes.
Tyler Timbering,
Yes.
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Rosa Cavazos,
Abstain.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
with 4 members approving the November 13th minutes. They are approved.
Okay, and thank you, Jolie. Do I hear a motion to approve the December 11th, 2023 meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Chad Gearhart and Josh Greening.
Rosa Cavazos,
Abstain?
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Tyler Timbrink,
Yes.
Chad Gerhart,
Yes.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
with four members approving the December 11th minutes. They are approved.
Thank you, Jolie. And do I hear a motion to approve finally the March 11th, 2024 meeting minutes?
I'll do a motion to approve.
I would second.
Josh and Rosa.
Tyler Timbrink,
Yes.
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Rosa Cavazos,
Yes.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
Chad Gerhart,
Yes.
with a unanimous vote of approval. The March 11th meeting minutes are approved.
Thank you, Jolie. The next item on the agenda is communications received from the public to the planning department. Joni, do you want to speak on that?
Certainly. In regards to public comments that the planning department has received, as you guys are aware, I've sent all of those to you via email. I sent an email on Friday, May 10, that would have contained all of the ones through Friday. And then I sent an email about 3 o'clock today that had all of the comments that were provided over the weekend. And I had not received any additional comments prior to the time that I left and came here for the meeting. So you should have all comments. If I happen to get back to my office and there are additional comments, I will forward those on to you for your records, although you would not be able to necessarily take them into consideration tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Would any members of the commission like to declare a conflict of interest at this time? Hearing none. Okay. We will open the public hearing. First up, we'll talk about solar energy and the one-year moratorium. If we can, I'd like to stay focused on the item and not get too far off into the weeds. As I mentioned before, you'll have 4 minutes to talk. And if you have the same comment on both the solar and the wind, you can make your comment on solar, and then when it's time for the wind, you can come up and just say that my previous comment applies to this one also. So you don't need to go through your whole presentation again. Okay. So if you'd like to come out and speak for solar.
Well, hold on. I have a presentation first before we
Okay,
open.
right.
So
Sorry.
what you'll do is you'll go ahead and do open the public hearing, and then I'll do my presentation, and then we'll do public comment after
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joni.
Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of screens prior to us starting the actual solar moratorium, just to give a little bit of information and history for the Planning Commission. Statute and regulations dictate what we're doing tonight. First is that Shawnee County in itself has county home rule authority through KSA 19-101 at SEC. In 2004, there was a charter ordinance that exempted Shawnee County from Chapter 12. A lot of planning and zoning statutes fall under Chapter 12, but because they exempted us from that chapter, we instead fall under Chapter 19. And Shawnee County has been deemed an urban county, and so those Chapter 19 statutes are for urban county planning statutes. What you'll see in the staff report is I talk about KSA 19-2960, which is the authority that the Planning Commission has and Board of County Commissioners have to adopt zoning regulations, and then after that fact, to amend them from time to time. The current regulations were put into place back in 2006. They have been modified slightly here and there over the years, but the crux of the zoning regulations that were adopted are still the same as what was adopted back in 2006. A couple of other points that I want to talk about, because you typically are here hearing a specific zoning case. There are two types of actions that you might take. One is legislative and one is quasi-judicial. When you're here in front of a case where someone has applied for a rezoning or a conditional use permit, you're sitting in a quasi-judicial manner, like a court. You're hearing evidence, you're hearing facts, you're weighing the evidence, you're balancing equities and application of the rules and the regulations. This is a little bit different though, because what you're doing instead is actually considered legislative action. This is a general zoning regulation that's going to apply to the entire county, not just one particular parcel. So you are instead looking at an amendment to what are already approved regulations. It's creating a new policy that will then be applied later to potential zoning cases. You hear us talk a lot about the golden factors when we're working on quasi-judicial cases. Golden doesn't necessarily apply with legislative actions. It's not inapplicable, but you're not having to look at those 8 golden factors and other factors that can be taken into consideration. Instead, there may be some of the golden factors that seem like they apply, where you're needing to make a reasoned decision. You need to articulate the facts or standards. You're looking at whether it's a benefit to the community at large. You're looking at the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community at large. But you're not looking at the specifics of how it applies to a neighbor or a different parcel. Okay, so straight to item 1, solar energy conversion systems, considering a 1-year moratorium. In specific, the proposal tonight is an amendment to the Shawnee County zoning regulations implementing a 1-year moratorium on all limited community scale and commercial utility scale solar energy conversion systems and projects. And this would apply in all zoning district classifications within unincorporated Shawnee County. It would not consider personal or small accessory scale solar energy projects, and I'll go into those definitions here just a little bit later. The purpose of a moratorium is to allow the Shawnee County Planning Department and you as the Planning Commission to conduct necessary research, make appropriate findings, and then reach a formal long-range decision regarding solar energy in unincorporated Shawnee County. Now that could be a ban, it could be an allowance of solar, it could be an allowance of some types of solar and not others. But as a whole, this moratorium would put all of that on pause for a period of 1 year, and then at that point, if the regulations and a decision has been made about how to move forward with solar, then that moratorium can go away. Instead of going through a lot of different slides, what I'm actually going to do is just review the staff report that was made available to everybody, and I think that the details and information within that staff report are the most important, and so it's not worth reiterating it all on the screen here. Ultimately, what you're looking at is a moratorium. What is a moratorium? It is an interim development control mechanism. It's a temporary prohibition of an activity. Also, in specific, I want to point out that this is just for the unincorporated portion of Shawnee County, and so unincorporated means all of the outskirts, the rural areas, the areas that fall outside of the city limits. So these rules would not be rules that apply within the city limits of the city of Topeka, city of Auburn, Silver Lake, Rossville, other cities. They have the ability to make their own zoning rules. Now, some people don't recognize that you may live in Topeka and be unincorporated, or you live in Barryton and you're unincorporated. If you fall outside of the city limits of the city limits, then you fall within unincorporated Shawnee County and you fall under the jurisdiction of the Shawnee County Planning Department for zoning purposes. A limited community scale energy conversion project. This is something that's more like a community or a group of people or a group of entities that come together for the sole purpose of creating a solar energy project, a solar farm. That solar would be for the sole purpose of benefiting that community or the shareholders, the stakeholders that have agreed to that group and have paid or funded the solar farm. This could include rural electric cooperatives and municipal utilities. Obviously, I'm not going to dictate what a municipal utility in the city of Topeka does so long as it falls within the city limits, but if it falls in unincorporated Shawnee County where they're looking at putting this proposed solar farm, then it could fall under the jurisdiction of the Shawnee County Planning Department. These projects can include all of the appurtenant facilities like private roads, substations, battery storage facilities, transmission and feeder lines, the actual mechanism of the solar energy conversion system, which would be solar arrays, the entire proposal. In looking at this definition, I believe that the 2 solar farms that were previously approved by Shawnee County would probably fall underneath this definition because they are a rural electric cooperative. However, they are not going to fall under this moratorium because their conditional use permits have already been considered, they've already been approved. So those would not apply to those 2 specific solar farms that are already up and functioning. This moratorium would just apply to any other new ones that wanted to try and come to Shawnee County. A commercial or utility scale solar energy project would be one that is considered a larger electrical network for sale. All of the energy that is collected, the electricity that is collected is for sale, resale, or off-site use. It is not for personal use on someone's home. These are what you would typically see as the large utility scale, massive solar farms that you can see around the country. So those would also fall underneath this moratorium. The solar energy conversion system itself is the machine, the system, the device that converts the sunlight into electricity. Again, personal solar panels that are on your own home, that are on your business, are not affected by this so long as the solar that is collected is for the on-site use of that individual or that business. We're not looking to, we have a lot of solar panels going up all over Shawnee County. We're not looking to eliminate your own ability to put a solar panel on your property. Presently, if we received an application for a solar farm, this would most likely go through a conditional use permit process. They come in and apply in my office. It gets set for a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. We send out all of the information to various utilities and departments for input and review, and then they give us comment back. We put all of that together, and then we present it to you at a Planning Commission public hearing. You would hear those conditional use permits and be able to review the specifics of each of those on a case-by-case basis. We do not have regulations at this point that are specific to solar, so there has been some concern documented historically that the Planning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners don't have enough information to know exactly how to move forward with these types of solar farms, and they wanted to have more specifics, guidelines, so that the companies who come in and apply for these have the ability to follow those guidelines and have very specific regulations set in place and decisions made that are equal to all of the different applicants across the board. Shawnee County Comprehensive Plan also does not address solar energy conversion systems. I believe that a public survey was conducted as a part of that comprehensive plan, and it did identify that renewable energy was not a priority for the community at that time. And so our comprehensive plan that was approved in 2018 doesn't address specifically the desire of Shawnee County to have either wind or solar in our county. As a note, depending on how all of these proceedings turn out, we will likely have to come back and do an amendment of our comprehensive plan, do a review and an amendment, and make sure that whatever regulations get approved comply with the comprehensive plan at that time and keep them up to date so that the two documents work together. For tonight's purpose of this moratorium, we're going to handle this just like you would other zoning requests where you obviously have the public hearing. You can allow public comment. After the public comment has closed, you as planning commissioners have the ability to discuss amongst yourselves. You can ask me questions about my staff report, input on how I came to the conclusions that I did, and then at that point you can take action on whatever motion you may wish to take. Legal notice of this public hearing was published in the Topeka Metro News on Monday, April 22nd, 2024. There is a 20-day requirement that we provide public notice of these public hearings, and that was complied with. Okay, so other than that, staff considerations and concerns. My belief is that a moratorium is an acceptable use of an interim development control. It will allow us to do research and make appropriate findings. It allows us time to be prepared and know all of the different options before considering any possible applications for systems in the future. And at this time, my recommendation, based on all of this information and generally recognized planning practices, is that you would recommend an approval of a 1-year moratorium on the limited community scale and commercial utility scale energy conversion systems and projects in all of the zoning districts within unincorporated Shawnee County.
Thank you, Joni, for your recommendation. At this time, if you'd like to come up and speak either in favor of or against solar moratorium, please come up, state your name, and write your name on the pad of paper, and you have 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Evening. Richard Johnson, 3536 Huxman, Silver Lake. I live less than a half mile from what they now call a solar garden and less than 2 miles from a larger solar complex if the construction is not stopped. I was the president of a 1,500 residential group that stopped the ethanol plant from being built in Shawnee County. I also exposed the Kansas gas illegally taxing over 700 customers. I wouldn't be here tonight if I didn't feel this cause was unjust. I am against any future construction of wind or solar complexes in Shawnee County because of concerns that their effect on weather patterns, property value, environment, and ecosystems. Solar farms are nothing more than a hot plate that absorbs heat and has a direct effect on warming our planet. If you take a thermal camera to a solar site, you can see how much heat is retained. The panels have temperatures anywhere from 140 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. Go back after dark and see how much heat is retained. There are websites that can show you the same results. California has the desert, in their southern desert, has a solar complex that covers 150,000 acres. There are mountains over 5,000 wind generators. The top 10 largest solar complexes on the West Coast cover 50 square miles and alter the fragile desert's ecosystem and even kill some of the desert in places. Interesting enough, the Sierra Club has suggested painting roofs and flat surfaces with heat-reflected paint. Scientists are also working on creating clouds to shade the earth while solar panels retain the heat that nature would have reflected if left alone. The butterfly effect is a metaphorical explanation using the flapping wings of a butterfly that creates a hurricane on the other part of the world. Think of all the solar and wind sites we have now as butterfly wings. How much solar and wind energy is too much? I say we have enough until more studies are conducted on its destructive qualities. One of China's farms has 7 million panels. The United Arab Emirates has one of the largest complexes in the world. It was activated last November. According to the BBC, both locations are experiencing historically extreme heat and devastating floods. California is no different. They've had 4 major storms in 6 months. Africa is expected to have the hottest year they have ever had, and they have 4 huge hot plate farms. The locations I have mentioned have one thing in common. They are experiencing violent weather patterns since the solar and wind farm epidemic. Green energy in the northern hemisphere is so large that it has altered the weather patterns in the southern hemisphere and is altering some of the ecosystems. It is time we put the brakes on to see how nature is going to respond to this man-made interference before it's too late to turn back. I'll leave copies of material that I've collected and a site on the sites, and also a site where the former Oklahoma governor regrets accepting wind farms. Thank you.
So I have a whole lot to say, so I will probably also speak during the wind section. NERC, or the North American Electric Reliability Corporation.
What's your name?
Oh, Jonathan Smith. I live at 2526 Southeast Colorado.
Thank you.
NERC, or the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, is a multinational nonprofit tasked with organizing the 6 regional electricity networks spanning between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Their main priority is the study and implementation of the bulk power system across all 6 regions to maintain security and reliable energy transmission across the continent. They are regulated by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, because NERC is the United States declared energy reliability organization. That's why that specific nonprofit does the studies. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is an independent federal body tasked with several things, most importantly, the regulation of the transmission and wholesale sale of electricity across state lines, as well as every other modern form of energy, meaning oil, natural gas, and hydroelectric facilities. That body, FERC, keeps track of the national demand of electricity in the United States. The Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023 mandated an interregional transfer capability study to be conducted by NERC. During the application of that study, which is to be updated sometime in June of this year, they completed their FERC mandated and annual long-term reliability assessment December of last year. That long-term reliability assessment determined that our electric grid, the Southwest Power Pool, we are using more and more electricity every year. In fact, between 2015 and 2022, the normal increase in electricity demand was about 0.5% increase every year. And in 2023, the increase shot up to 0.9%. That year, and the forecasts for NERC only get higher with additional energy use models. In the short term, locally, we all know about the arrival of the Panasonic battery plant in DeSoto, as well as the Google data center coming to Kansas City. And the more our economy moves in the digital direction, which shows no sign of slowing down, these tech giants are going to build more and more data centers around the country, which is further increasing our energy demand. Additionally, the 2023 long-term reliability assessment found the largest impediment to the reliability of our bulk power system in the Southwest Power Pool to be extreme weather events caused by climate change. With the data showing that every year our summers are getting hotter and our winters are getting colder, our in-home temperature regulating equipment is going to cause a larger and larger drain on our power pools. The assessment also added that extreme cold can paralyze our natural gas equipment as it currently stands, which makes up for almost a third of Evergy's power pool, which could lead to a catastrophic power failure event. We are at a moment in time where we need to be addressing our shortfalls in power generation and mitigating any further provocation of climate change. This can most quickly and cost efficiently be addressed by wind and solar generation, as stated in the AR6 Synthesis Summary Report for Policymakers released by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a group of thousands of scientists across 195 countries over the course of decades. That report came out in 2023. Wind and solar could potentially be supplemented by nuclear, perhaps, although it is cost ineffective in comparison to wind and solar and would only be useful for bulk power system reliability in inclement weather, almost certainly to come from increasing weather events. At this moment, we are in obvious need of additional power generation facilities. The obvious answer to most, as is the status quo, would be additional coal or natural gas plants. This would be like cutting off your fingers to feed your hunger. We must be addressing climate impact of releasing additional CO2 from coal. Did we hit red?
Time.
I can continue during wind. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackson Woods. I live in Topeka at 1195 Southwest Mulvane Street. I'm graduating from Washburn University, and I've lived here for 24 years. I come here to speak against the ban on wind and solar energy production. I understand it's a moratorium, but there's people talking about bans here, so I want to address that. So I'm here because I didn't hear about the survey, so I think we should do a better job of distributing those. But a ban on these energy production modes is short-sighted. The benefits of these renewable energy sources in our county far outweigh the negative effects. So more of my comments are on wind energy. For solar, I would like to say that the reason we're having storms is not because of solar farms. It is because of climate change from decades, centuries at this point, of burning fossil fuels that cause releases of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, affecting our ozone layer. You know, when you put more heat in, the heat's not able to escape because of this ozone layer getting thicker and all this stuff. So climate change is real. It's being caused by humans, maybe not entirely, but there's a large part. When you burn carbon, it's going to release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The more we can move away from these fossil fuel sources, as they diminish, as they get more expensive to extract from the ground, we need to be looking towards more renewable energy sources. So if a moratorium is deemed necessary to ensure that the implementation of them is safe for our residents, that may be appropriate. But at this time, I'm questioning the need for that. I feel like we have capable people here to consider those, as already we have a case-by-case basis of considering these projects. In addition, we have all sorts of resources that we can bring to bear. I think we can handle it in under a year, I would hope. If not, we have plenty of Washburn University, Kansas University, Manhattan has Kansas State University. We have intelligent people here in Kansas that can help us out with this, that I'm sure we can consult with. Speaking as a young person, I know that I'd feel better living in communities that utilize more green energy, and many of my generation agree. Climate change is in the top 5 issues that my generation is concerned about our government addressing. So the more we can move away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, I think that's what we need to have a healthy county. As Jonathan said, our society needs to produce energy. That isn't changing. Seeing solar panels and wind turbines is a good energy of where it comes from. Much like how children can visit an agricultural farm to see where their food comes from, it's good to see where your energy comes from. Thank you for listening. I really would encourage you to vote against the moratorium on wind. I'll speak about, or moratorium on solar. I'll be here to talk about wind more in a minute.
Hello. My name is Mark Galbraith. I live at 1230 Southwest College here in Topeka, and I'm here to speak in favor of the moratorium on solar, but only in that I realize you need time to study the regulation of solar, utility scale solar, obviously. I'm not sure that a year is the appropriate amount of time. Seems like a lot, but obviously you need some. So in that sense, I support the moratorium. But I wanted to say that, and I'm really here to say that I hope it's time, and I hope we can all acknowledge that climate change is here. Climate change is real, and climate change is here. Climate scientists have been telling us about climate change for quite some time now, for decades, perhaps for 50 years, perhaps a bit more. And they've been sort of adding to the evidence to support the fact that climate change is real and in fact is happening, and sort of building on that argument year after year almost. And I think actually it would be fair to say that there maybe isn't an argument any longer. it's pretty clear that climate change is happening now. Even as non-scientists can see that with our eyes and what we read and listen, watch on television. We see it in the extreme heat that we experience here in Kansas, but certainly elsewhere in the country and certainly around the globe. We see it in the droughts, again, that are happening even here in Kansas, in the flooding, in the wildfires, forest fires, and much, much more. And the fact is, it will get worse if we don't do something about it. Just last week, in a survey of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a panel of climate scientists, we were told by those scientists that the heating of the planet is happening and happening even quicker than they had anticipated. And that's really not good news. It's very serious, and it will impact all of us. But, science have also told us again and again and again what we need to, if not stop, at least slow down climate change. And what they've said, reduce it to just a couple of words, is that we need to stop burning fossil fuels. To stop burning fossil fuels. Luckily, scientists and technology has also provided an alternative to burning fossil fuel to generate electricity. Just one in this case, of those primary alternatives is solar, solar-generated energy. And solar energy to be converted to electricity to power our homes and our businesses and our farms, as opposed, again, to burning fossil fuels. That technology is still maturing. I think it has much more to provide to us, and it has a strong, positive future to offer. So I do understand the moratorium. I understand you need time to study the appropriate regulation of utility-scale solar in Shawnee County. I hope you do that. I hope it takes less than a year, but if it takes a year, I understand that as well. And I just want to say that, there are good models out there. Time. Okay. Thanks very much.
My name is Terry Kaufman. I live at 2120 Southwest Hoke Road. I'm not here to talk about climate change. I'm here to talk about whether solar, industrial scale, utility scale solar energy is a good idea or not. I'd like to share with you an email exchange I had with a writer for USA Today. Her name is Elizabeth Weiss. She published an article in USA Today, February 4th of this year. It was titled, "The Truth Behind Green Energy Debates," which is, I think, a lot to do with why we're here. The article mentioned, and I quote, over the project's 35-year life from an Ohio solar installation. I emailed her because my antenna went up when she talked about the project's 35-year life. I emailed her asking the source of her 35-year life statement. She replied with a link to the item that she drew her statement from. It's from the U.S. Energy Department Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy website, the Solar Energy Technologies Office. There are millions of solar installations connected to the grid in the United States, which means there are hundreds of millions of panels in use. Most panels are young. Approximately 70% of solar energy systems in existence have been installed since 2017. And there, a report goes on to say, The estimated operational lifespan of a module is about 30 to 35 years. Estimated, okay? Not average, not actual, not the 35-year life, okay? So I advised Ms. Weiss that the 35-year lifespan was estimated per the source that she used, not stated to be 35 years. She admitted that, adding her spin, saying the source said expected. No, it didn't. It said estimated, which is a misrepresentation in my opinion. Now, the fact that 70% of these have been installed in the United States in the last 7 years makes it pretty difficult to talk about a 30 to 35-year lifespan. And I don't care how many millions of them there are. The question is, in a 2,000-foot array, which is the smallest that any utility would be, there are 800,000 panels. In a 5,000 array, which is kind of the upper limit, but not unusual, you're starting to talk about almost 3 million panels. 3 million glass panels, think about it, in about 5 square miles. So I asked her if she planned to issue a correction, but she never replied. One more thing, Photovoltaic Magazine, which I subscribe to, and I have a background in solar energy early in my career for the world's largest glass container company. We manufactured solar collectors a long time ago. Photovoltaic Magazine is the leading solar energy industry, global industry publication. In November 1st of 2023, they wrote that there is emerging an increasing and recurring detection of visual inspections.
Time.
Pardon?
Time.
Already?
Foreman. Yep.
Darn! My timer says I ended 12 seconds ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Vicki Arnett. I live at 1110 Southwest Medford in Topeka, and I'm the co-chair of the League of Women Voters of Topeka, Shawnee County Climate Study Committee. The League has undertaken the task of writing a position on climate change and what Topeka, Shawnee County can do to mitigate the negative impacts. The League supports the development of alternative energy sources to allow utilities to move away from the use of fossil fuels. We oppose the moratorium, the one-year moratorium on utility-scale solar. We recommend regulating utility-scale solar development by protecting specific places and resources. This approach allows the Planning Commission to utilize the conditional use permitting process to include additional regulations such as transmission, siting, and road maintenance in future contractual agreements. We believe that a one-year moratorium would be a missed opportunity for economic development in the area of solar alternatives in our community. Due to the manner in which Shawnee County development has occurred over the past 30 years, we live in a really ex-urban county with limited opportunities for wind development. Solar development has much more potential for future growth. The League supports the Planning Commission moving forward with the development of solar regulations which are transparent and include community input. Global warming is worldwide. Mitigation will happen here. Thank you for your time and your service.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your comments. We have one more maybe coming up.
Thank you for having the meeting. My name is Mike Crawford. I'm an old power plant guy, worked for Kansas Power and Light for
Where do you
35
live?
years.
Where's your residence?
I'm a resident in Topeka, 6407 Southwest 21st Terrace.
Thank you.
Can I hand you guys some pieces of paper to talk off of?
Yeah. I think we can. Can we?
I basically had a couple of thoughts. The first, I'd like to talk about the Southwest Power Pool a little bit more. One of the gentlemen talked about that. As this map shows, it basically covers, they're in charge of running the transmission system basically through the center part of the country. Starts in northern Texas, goes up through the Dakotas. On page 2, the peak load that Southwest Power Pool has experienced is 56,000 megawatts. That occurred last August, of course, in hot weather. They have currently 854 requests to add generation to the Southwest Power Pool. Of those, 40,000 are already in service. So there's still 115,000 megawatts of requests. The Southwest Power Pool considers these requests by analyzing what it does to the transmission system in this area. And they really have no ability to say no to somebody that wants to add generation. All they can do is define how much it ought to cost for them to hook up. So the 115,000 megawatts, you might notice that's twice as big as the Southwest Power Pool is today. So we're talking about tripling the size of the Southwest Power Pool capacity within the next 6 years, because all of these are anticipated to be online by 2030. We are not out of power. Down at the bottom of that same page, I talked a little bit about how much it's going to cost. So that's 115,000 megawatts, which is 115 million kilowatts. The average cost, according to the Department of Energy, $1,500 a kilowatt to install. That's $172 billion. And a 30% investment tax credit is going to get these people that want to put them in $51 billion in profit. And the customers of this area are going to incur additional costs because the transmission system has to continually be beefed up. And you've seen Evergy installing steel towers and heavier wires on their transmission lines already. So they're spending money to do that. The other comment I would have is that the solar systems all use inverters because they produce direct current, and you have to turn that into alternating current. The inverters basically imitate a true sine wave, which is normal 60-cycle electricity, by sending sharp pulses of energy periodically to try to mimic the shape of the sine wave. Those harmonics are a source of concern for the stability of the system. Southwest Power Pool did a study 5 years ago and said that if we get over about 60% inverter-based generation, we can expect to have stability problems with the system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Deb Yoakum. I live in Tecumseh, outside of the city of Topeka, where I will still be allowed to have a solar panel in my yard and go off grid, thank goodness, because I'm an old lady and I want to stop burning fossil fuel. For the grandkids and everybody else out there, we've got to stop burning fossil fuel. And there's only, right now, three alternatives, but nobody seems interested in nuclear at this point. So we need some solar panels and wind, and at least my air conditioner will continue to run when I'm off grid. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Richards. I live at 709 Southwest Vesper Avenue here in Topeka, Kansas. Public school teacher by trade. A one-year moratorium on the wind and solar commercial is a good idea, but we need to have a complete ban on it. Climate change is real. I agree with that. Fossil fuels is the best alternative we have right now, unless we're going to discuss building a new nuclear power plant for the state of Kansas, which I think would be a great idea. I won't go into nuclear right now, but any large-scale commercial organization that comes to town and throws enough money at our elected officials is probably going to get a pretty good chance of getting their solar or wind farm. How many decades ago we were sold a bill of materials on how solar energy and wind energy were going to save our planet because of this climate change? That's just not true. One thing a lot of people don't take into consideration in the construction of these massive wind farms and solar panel farms is the amount of those nasty fossil fuels that we have to rely on every day. The amount of energy it takes to construct one of these wind farms, you will never, ever recoup that amount of energy that goes into the construction of one of those. The concrete pads that holds one of those towers is how many hundreds of cubic yards of concrete. And concrete is the most expensive building material that we have in the world today. And so it just is never going to work that we get our energy back. I grew up in western Kansas where every farmer and rancher I knew had a windmill to pump the water for their livestock tank. On a small scale like that, wind and solar is wonderful. I'd have them on my house if I could afford it right now. I think that it is solar and wind are a good way to offset and mitigate the costs of small manufacturing facilities or even your home and residential use. But the large farms, wind or solar, are just not the way to go. We will never, ever regain the amount of energy back from those as it took to construct them. And now, as several gentlemen have said, we're beginning to see the environmental effects. The first generation wind farms are starting to reach the end of their life cycle. What are you going to do with those huge fiberglass blades? Put them in a landfill? That doesn't work that way. They will never, ever be of anything except a big pile of fiberglass. So those are my thoughts on the matter. And like I say, a one-year moratorium is a great idea, but we need to have a complete ban. We can use the solar and wind on a small scale to help offset our personal costs, but on a large scale, it just doesn't work.
Hi, my name is Carrie Barth. I am a Kansas House Representative for House District 5. I live in Baldwin City out in the rural area in Douglas County, just south of Lawrence, Kansas. I don't live in the Shawnee County area, but I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Shawnee County residents and people that reach out to me, not only in Shawnee County, but across the entire state of Kansas, who want for people like you to understand that the risk and the health risk and the property values, the safety, efficacy, reliability of industrial wind and industrial complex solar complexes is a real thing. I also heard tonight that there was basically I think it was asked of Commissioner Corbett to be recused because of a conflict of interest, and I don't know if there was basis for that or not. I wasn't here to understand and hear all the issues around that, but in Douglas County, I've been to multiple commissioner meetings there. I hope that the precedents you guys have set helps us with the recusal of somebody who has way more reason to be recused than Representative Corbett. So I want to talk about some different things at the state level that I've done. One of the things I'm going to be introducing here, if we have a special session where I get elected for next election, is a Consumer Protection Act. I already have 6 affidavits filed with the Attorney General's office on the predatory practices, unethical practices of the wind and solar commercial industry. The unethical predatory practices on people who are in nursing homes, people with diminishing capacity, people with dementia is unheard of. They flat out lie to people to get them, coerce them to signing these leases. So I need you to understand that there's a big issue out there with these things happening, and it's a real thing. And these affidavits have been signed by attorneys and have been completed, and I'm going to actually file a bill that will prohibit any further use of this into something that will actually protect the people. Something also I did at the state level was a comprehensive third-party study that I proposed. Actually, today there is no independent, comprehensive third-party study at all. There is 0 on the safety and health effects of wind and solar. You have a lot of information out there from a lot of different sources, but nothing that compiles all that data. This actual study was really, really thorough. It had a lot of different pieces to the different things that it would look at, from the safety, health, wildlife, environment, water, you name it. Even changing climate itself actually was part of the study, because there are some indications that that is the case. And I want you to know that there were around, I was told, 50 to 75 lobbyists hired to combat my study. And you might be wondering, why would 50 to 75 lobbyists come to stop a study that would tell us the truth, right? Other than that they don't want you to know the truth on the how unsafe, how much it affects your property values. And there's a lot of money in this industry. And so there's a lot of reasons why they would want it to keep going, because there is, what I call it, a money laundering system going on right now today with our taxpayer dollars into a system to fund industrial level solar and wind. Some of the things that I think, if you just look at different components around the studies of it, you look at ice throws. I figured so. I saw that. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Hello, my name is Robert Riley, 2424 Southwest 26th Drive here in Topeka. I won't reiterate too many of the arguments that have been said tonight, but I do support community solar. I think if you guys want to take your time to think about regulations and utility scale, but I also want to split the hair with community scale. Somebody's talked about how, if they want, they can put solar and wind on their house. Not everybody can afford to do that, and not everybody lives in a spot that they can do that. whether they're in an apartment or a house that doesn't live an optimal position for sun and light, and maybe they can't afford it. So just on an equity issue, like sometimes there's going to be apartment complexes with fields right next to them or an HOA that might want to install a solar field to offset their energy usage, and that's different than utility scale. So I just would encourage you to use common sense when you think about the regulations. There's already many laws protecting seniors from getting scammed. We don't need new laws to protect that. We need to enforce the ones that we have. Big money interest from fossil fuels also pump a lot of money into this. So there's a lot of arguments out there that goes a lot of different directions to both sides of this argument. And so I would encourage you to think about it with a clear head. And, just because we didn't identify this in county priorities 6 years ago doesn't mean that we can't address it now or that we have to ban it now. That's not a great argument either, okay? So please use clear heads, let the fallacies and the bad arguments aside, protect our rights to keep the options to do things in a common sense way. Banning things isn't the way. Coming together with common sense solutions to address the concerns are, and that's your job as a body to synthesize the concerns and put the proper parameters in place so that we can do it in a way that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone who came up to speak. At this time, we'll close the public hearing on the solar moratorium.
I would make sure that there's nobody out in the outskirts, and just give a minute to make sure.
Okay, is there anyone outside of this room that would like to come up? Is there anyone in the back or anyone who hasn't had a chance yet? Oh, okay. Looks like we have somebody coming up.
My name's Steve Burrell. I'm from Topeka, and I live over on at 2232 Southwest Landover Lane in Topeka. And I'd just like to say that I think that on the order of a moratorium for wind farms and solar installations, I think those should be done on a case-by-case basis by the county board, the commissioners. And I don't think you should just do a blanket moratorium on everything that's this size for the whole county. Whether you guys want to do it on your level as a planning thing and do it case by case with the ability for the entity that wants to put in a wind farm or something to appeal to the county executive body there, I think they should have the right to do that. And I don't think you ought to be putting this roadblock in the way of these kind of things. We need this new energy coming out. I can remember 58 years ago when I was in school, they said that the ambient temperature of the Earth was going to increase and it would be hot in the year 2030. Well, 2030 is just 6 years away, and you have to start thinking about what we're going to do to keep carbon dioxide, which has been increasing in the atmosphere since the start of the Industrial Revolution, at bay, or at least to start getting rid of it out of the atmosphere. And these types of installations are one way to do that. So we should do our part, just like the people did during World War II when everybody had a victory garden. If they all need a solar installation in their backyard, that's what we're going to have to do, people, because the alternatives are not very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you make sure to sign your name on the sheet, sir? There's a sign-on sheet at the table. Thank you.
Okay. Oh.
Good evening. I'm Karma Lockney. I live in Auburn, Kansas, or just outside of Auburn, Kansas. I plan to speak later in the wind, but I'm here to say I am happy you've placed a one-year moratorium on the solar. I do not know that it's enough of a moratorium. I think some people here don't realize this, but this magazine comes out from our local Free State Electric, Kansas Country Living. This is dated November 2023. The article's titled, Correcting Transmission Cost Disparity for Kansas Electric Cooperative Members. Kansas are unfairly shouldering transmission costs for energy exported out of the state. So if we're exporting it out of the state, then how do we have not enough electricity here? So I do not think we need extra solar panels here if we're actually exporting it out of state already. And I'll speak later on the wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Last call. Okay. We will close the public hearing on the solar moratorium. And at this time, we'll hear comments from the commissioners. Okay. No comments from the commissioners at this time. Do I hear a motion?
I'll do a motion to approve the recommendation of the staff report.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Tyler Timbrink,
Yes.
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Rosa Cavazos,
Yes.
Chad Gerhardt,
Yes.
Jeanette Johnson.
Yes.
With a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission, the solar moratorium is approved and will be heard by the County Commission on June 13th.
Thank you, Jolie. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the wind energy conversion system project ban. Oh, okay. 5 minute. We'll take a 5-minute break here and just stretch our legs before we jump into the next item on the agenda.
Peer pressure.
Here.
They peer pressured me into it.
I'm sure that took all the.
Okay, we will open up the public hearing on our second agenda item, wind energy project ban, and we'll get started by hearing the Planning Commission presentation. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so item number 2 is the wind energy conversion system project ban. The proposal, the specific proposal would be an amendment to the Shawnee County zoning regulations prohibiting limited community scale and commercial utility scale wind energy conversion systems and projects in all zoning district classifications within the unincorporated portion of Shawnee County. The purpose on here should not be here. I forgot to delete that, so that has nothing to do with it. That had to do with the solar. Again, I'm going to go straight to my report because my recommendations are based specifically on the items that are found within this report. And I wanted to make clear that I recognize that there are a lot of things that I did not address in here that may be of topic or may be of concern to people in the room. And it's not that those concerns or topics aren't relevant or aren't concerning, but they weren't the things that I took into consideration when I made my recommendation on this proposal. I will try and go step by step and put as much of this on the record as possible. I know that it's not all interesting. It is kind of dry at times. So the first is I gave a definition of a moratorium, but I also wanted to address what a ban or a prohibition might mean for Shawnee County. And the first thing that I wanted to recognize is that this is a ban for now. A zoning regulation or a zoning amendment, it's like a law, and laws are what get put into place right now based on the information we have right now, and laws can be changed. So I want that to be clear that while the proposal for now is a ban and the recommendation is for a ban, that if things were to change with the county, if things were to change with the comprehensive plan, if things were to change with technology, that those opinions that I've announced within my report could potentially change in the future. So I just want to make that clear before moving forward with any of the recommendations. A wind energy conversion system is a wind-driven machine that converts kinetic energy from wind into another form of energy. So it's taking that wind and creating electricity. You may often hear to this as a wind tower, a wind turbine, but it also can include many other types of structures. There are many ways that you can capture that wind, and it may not look like the tall three-pronged turbine. There are other ways to collect that wind, but this definition would encompass all. It encompasses all types of wind collection for the specific purposes defined herein. It would include any of the supporting structures and facilities associated with those wind energy conversion systems. That may include ancillary operational met towers, collector or feeder lines, transformers, substations, roads, administrative buildings, data acquisition facilities, storage facilities, etc. Not necessarily talked about within this report are personal or small-scale wind energy conversion projects. One thing that I want to identify is that it is my opinion that if the Planning Commission were to recommend or allow for personal wind, that we need more research and we need more time to identify what those definitions would be and what those regulations might be. I would have concerns about height. I would have concerns about size, number, location, setbacks. And so I think that would need additional detail if we are going to allow personal wind to occur. Now, that being said, My specific proposal here doesn't identify a ban against personal wind. It does just address the limited and commercial scale projects. A limited scale project or community scale project would be similar to that which was identified with solar, where a group of people come together for the sole purpose of creating a system or a project that supports multiple households, businesses, that collective group. Commercial wind then is a facility of one or more wind energy conversion systems, and then the combination of mechanical and structural elements thereof, where the primary purpose of the electricity generated, created, and collected is for use in a larger electrical network. It is not for individual use, but instead for sale, resale, or off-site use. And then that also includes all the appurtenant facilities. I wanted to mention that both with solar and wind, one term that you'll see come up is net metering. That is when you have a system that collects enough electricity or energy that you don't use, that at times you have the ability to sell that to the utility company in exchange for money or discount on services, whatever it may be. Net metering could still be allowed with personal. I just want to identify that that is not the same thing as selling or reselling or off-site use. It's just taking that extra energy that was collected and then reverting it over to another use. Presently, if the county received an application for a wind energy conversion system, it would be processed the same as any other private or public utility structure, which requires a conditional use permit. Within our zoning regulations, we do have height restrictions. So as of right now, within, say, for instance, the rural agricultural or the residential reserve district, the height limitation is 42 feet. And so if you were to allow wind turbines in those areas, our height limitation for those would have to be adjusted, or there would have to be an exception to that height limitation because a wind turbine is not going to fit under 42 feet. There are other considerations like airport hazard zoning regulations that would apply within specific areas. There are some exceptions to height limitations, but those all come down to non-commercial purposes. And then if it is for a non-commercial purpose, then you actually can go up to 62 feet. In no situation can that height conflict, like I said, with the airport hazard zones of the airports within Shawnee County. Just like with solar, wind energy conversion systems, or regulations specific to those do not exist. So right now, if we had an application come in, we would have no specific guidelines or requirements for setbacks, limitations on size, number, rotor size, the lighting, density, noise. The list could go on in regards to all of the different things that we could regulate on wind, designated truck routes, decommissioning, payment in lieu of taxes, bonding. Without those specific regulations, we would have to consider each of those applications on a case-by-case basis. It can get complex. One of the things that I relate these to are situations where we've had wedding venues, or we've had sand or rock quarries where we end up with a list of 20 or 25 conditions. I believe that with wind, if you were to allow wind turbines and wind projects to move forward, that the list of 20 to 25 could greatly exceed that. I think that we would need to have many conditions in place. And so the benefit is if you have regulations that are specific to identify a lot of those conditions, then they're built in automatically. You wouldn't have to identify them on a case-by-case basis. And so that's the struggle that you have had to contend with, is if we have one of these come forward, we wouldn't have those built-in restrictions. You would have to have a list of 20, 50, 30, whatever restrictions that they would have to meet with, and then we would have to monitor over a period of time. The Shawnee County Comprehensive Plan does not specifically address wind energy conversion systems, although we did identify in a public survey as a part of the research for that comprehensive plan that renewable energy was not a priority for the community. I will go into much greater detail about the comprehensive plan within my specific notations a little bit below. As a background to how we got to where we're at now, in early 2022, the topic of wind energy conversion systems was presented to the Board of County Commissioners as well as to the Planning Commission by the prior planning director. At that time, the guidance was that they wanted the creation of regulations for very specific consideration. They wanted the Planning Commission to do the research, put the regulations together, and then go through the public hearing process. I took over office just shortly after that, and we did not move forward with that project at that time. It took a little bit longer as we were processing change within the office and the Planning Commission. In 2023, I began introducing various topics in regards to both wind and solar farms at the monthly Planning Commission meetings. Specifically, we had speakers come in and talk with you about the various concerns, benefits, considerations. Those speakers came from both sides of the policies, some in favor, some against. We wanted to try and get a round amount of information for you to consider, and I wanted you to take this slow and methodical because this is a serious decision to be made. We had speakers such as Senator Mike Thompson, Jeremy Goodwin with WIBW in regards to concerns with radar, Joshua Sfati with the Kansas Power Alliance, Chris Carey with PPB Enviro Solutions, who's a geologist. We also had a presentation by Kyle Edelman, our Assistant County Counselor, in regards to legal issues. At that stage, we also created our survey. So during the month of September and October, over a 30 to 45 day period of time, first we created that survey. I did so in conjunction with the communications department, and then I brought it to you, and we went line by line on those questions to make it a better survey. We wanted it to be clear. We wanted the answers that we received to make sense. And so we then published that survey starting at the end of September, and it was open for a period of time for response. We put it out there the best that we could. We did media releases. I went on to news platforms and did interviews. We put it out on social media, but unfortunately, sometimes when political conversations start occurring, those posts get taken down and aren't visible. But we did put it out there with media releases and put it out there to the general public. We got 894 responses, which in the grand scheme of things may not seem like a lot, but there aren't 894 people here today. And so it does mean a lot to have that survey and the information that came to us from that survey. I think that there was a lot that we can read from that. After that, a motion was made and approved at our December Planning Commission meeting to move forward with the consideration for a ban on wind and the moratorium on solar. And at that time, it was made very clear that that wasn't the proposal, it wasn't the approval that was going to go on to the Board of County Commissioners. What it was the direction to be given to me as the planning director to determine how and what to present to you to move forward so that you can make the best decision possible. While in theory, it would have been good to try and get that done as soon as possible, we talked about doing it at the next available meeting. In true honesty, this takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of work, not only on behalf of my staff, but even just finding a location that could house the number of people that we thought might show up and not knowing exactly what was going to happen. I spent a lot of hours putting a lot of time and effort into the recommendations, taking information that was provided to us, researching, communicating with other counties, communicating with other planning departments who've gone through this experience, reading case law, meeting with our attorneys, trying to figure out the best method of doing this. It took time, and so here we are today in May. The intent of the motion and the vote at that time was to give staff direction on how to move forward with research and writing of the regulations. The focus of my report, like I said, is why wind farms or wind energy conversion systems are not suitable for Shawnee County, and it is my opinion that they are not suitable for Shawnee County. There are factors that are in favor of and against wind farms that have been taken into consideration. And I want to state on a level that I'm not anti-wind. This proposal and this recommendation is not an anti-wind recommendation. It is not suitable for Shawnee County recommendation. There are times and places and locations where wind may be appropriate, but we're not looking at those factors and we're not looking at those considerations. What we're looking at is what is suitable for Shawnee County, and that's all that matters to us right here tonight. At this time, no applications have been received from any wind farm company for a wind energy conversion system or project. We are well aware that there are leases out there from wind companies for properties here in Shawnee County. Those leases, to my understanding, some of them, maybe all of them, I don't know, have been in place since 2017. I did have a wind company contact me shortly after that December meeting who wanted to clarify that they did in fact have wind leases or leases for properties here in Shawnee County. They wanted to be completely open and honest with the fact that there were leases. They knew that we knew that there were leases, but we didn't know much about them. They had indicated to me that the leases that they had been in place since starting in 2017. That's a long time that those leases have been in place and nothing has happened, or research and minimal impact contact with my office has happened. They indicated that their interest in Shawnee County was for research purposes. At that time, they talked to me about whether or not it would be possible to put a Met Tower here in Shawnee County. And I don't know how many of you are from Osage County, but their point was that they were researching for the potential of a wind farm in Osage County. I don't know if the Osage County ban will ever get lifted, but if it does, what I am more concerned about is how that impacts Shawnee County. As of right now, a Met Tower would be possible in Shawnee County with a conditional use permit and with consideration of the height limitations. There may have to be some exceptions. But my recommendation tonight, based on all of that information, is that that Met Tower would actually be banned as well as a part of this recommendation. Not their specific Met Tower, I want to be clear. Just in general, Met Towers would also fall underneath the ban. As mentioned with the solar, pursuant to KSA 19-2960, after a county adopts a zoning resolution approving zoning regulations, then the regulations can be supplemented, changed, or generally revised by amendment. So that's what you would be doing here today. This is a proposal to amend. It is first heard by the Planning Commission and then goes in front of the Board of County Commissioners. What you are doing is a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. They are the ones that make the final vote. Notice was published 20 days prior to this meeting. It was published on Monday, April 22, 2024. In Shawnee County, zoning regulations have been in place based on the information that I have since at least 1956. We've been a zoned county. I have regulations that I have to look to from time to time when someone comes to me for a specific project that has been in place. And the earliest resolution or regulations that I've seen have been from 1956. Things have changed quite a bit since then, but to be honest, our resolution and our regulations are from 2006, which is a long time ago. There are times that I feel that they are very antiquated, and I have concerns about how we move forward with them and how we amend those. But trust me, you will be hearing from me soon on that as well, because we need to amend our zoning regulations. Okay, so specifically with my considerations and concerns, I've identified all of them in my staff report, and I'm going to touch on them each little by little because I want to make sure that we put the record out there for what it is that my recommendation is. First, I looked at was the consideration of roads, bridges, and infrastructure in Shawnee County. And this is not only the Shawnee County maintained roads, bridges, and infrastructure, but also those maintained by our townships, our state, because to get the equipment here, to get the cement trucks down the roads, it's going to have to go on many different avenues and routes. And so I have concern that the construction of a wind farm on a large scale would bring in a lot of trucks and large equipment, and it could destroy our roads. Now, of course, I want to point out that we can mitigate that in any scenario by having pre-development meetings and studies and plans in place whereby the company is required to do studies and provide us the pre-construction and post-construction and or in between construction and pay for upgrades to the roads as they get destroyed. It would not just fall to Shawnee County or the townships, but it is a concern because that takes an effect on all of the citizens of Shawnee County. I considered the concept of neighboring properties. You have participating landowners and you have non-participating landowners. I'm not going to go into specifics of what concerns there may be, but if you are the one signing a lease, it may be good and well for you because you're going to get paid for that lease. You're going to get paid for some of the electricity that is created on your property. But the people who surround you don't get that same compensation, but yet they are going to have a similar, if not worse, effect than those who have the wind turbines on their own property. It can be affected by their property values, traffic, noise, sight lines, many other considerations. The next thing that I looked at is radar and weather alerts. I took very seriously when Jeremy Goodwin came to us and said, while I can't specifically say that a wind farm causes disturbance, it's pretty likely that a wind farm can cause disturbance. And we don't want to find out after the fact that that's the case. We would rather know ahead that that's possible and do something to mitigate that. And he did offer some mitigating circumstances, such as weather cameras and radar on top of those turbines, ceasing circulation during severe weather events, other things that we can do to try and make sure that if tornadic weather or severe weather is coming towards us, that a wind farm is not creating disturbance that makes it hard for them to identify that tornado or severe storm. So again, it's something that I considered, but there are mitigating factors. I still found that the ban is more appropriate. As the Shawnee County Planning Department, we are the floodplain administrators for Shawnee County, for unincorporated Shawnee County. As many of you probably know, Shawnee County has a very large floodplain presence that affects parcels throughout the entire county. The intent of our floodplain management regulations is to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and there are special flood hazard areas that exist within the county. Changes to development within those areas can affect floodwater direction, height, and velocity. If we restrict or prohibit development within those flood zones, then we help protect and maintain the goal of the floodplain regulations, which is the health and safety of the general welfare of the public from loss of property, life, and personal goods. So it's my opinion that it would be a bad idea to place these wind turbines within the floodplain or the floodway because we don't know the effect that that could have. It would take a lot of engineers, a lot of documentation to overcome those concerns. Next is public input. As I mentioned, the community survey was available during September and October to gauge community interest. We received 894 responses. I've seen some public comments come through that The responses within the survey were very clear that people are opposed to wind, and I want to state that that is not true. Out of the responses, 30.67% responded that they strongly agree wind farms should be allowed, and another 13.37% responded that they agree wind farms should be allowed. That's nearly 45% of the response was in support of wind farms in Shawnee County. In the alternative, 45.84% strongly disagreed, and 6.4% disagree that wind farms should be allowed. So in the alternative, we had 51%. So about 45% versus 51%. That's not clear and decisive. There is still a strong favor for allowing wind in Shawnee County. We've received lots of emails, especially since public notice of this meeting came out. I've documented all of those and sent those on to the Planning Commission so that they have been able to see every single response that we have received. Phone calls, I've received a few phone calls, but not a lot. I've documented those the best that I can and have also provided those. We've published legal notice. We've done media releases. I did announcements at the Board of County Commission meetings. I've responded to people who've called and had questions from the public. I had a meeting with the Women League of Voters. I've done what I can to make sure that this topic was known to Shawnee County. We can only do as much as we can to get it out there. It's up to everybody else to spread the word and make sure that it was known that we were here tonight. We did have attendees at a couple of our Planning Commission meetings. As you see tonight here, a lot of the people are, well, some of the people are in red. People that came to those meetings also attended were wearing red, and my understanding is that signifies an anti to wind and solar, or at least wind and also solar. We did allow public comment at one of the meetings. We had offered public comment at another meeting or two when we had discussions about wind and solar, but we only received comments at a couple of the meetings. There weren't a great deal of people who showed up to those meetings. We recognized that there wasn't a widespread notice to people about the Planning Commission meetings while we were doing research. We weren't there to try and present specific topics that were being debated. It was for information. And so we did the best that we could in terms of making sure that our planning commissioners were aware. My hope was to take this process quite slow and to make sure that everybody was prepared. And I wasn't anticipating that we would be in the position of having a public hearing at this juncture, but we are here and the proposal is in front of you. The comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was done back in 2018. I was a part of that process back then and participated in the writing and the approval of that process. As mentioned before, there was a lack of support for wind energy and renewable energy in general. That's not what we were looking for in regards to future development and the goals of unincorporated Shawnee County. I do want to identify that Shawnee County has several natural environmental constraints that are of concern. The first, as I've mentioned, is floodplain. We also have steep slopes, prime farmland. We have rocky terrain. Add to this our proximity to the Flint Hills, native prairie lands, and scenic routes. The goal of the comprehensive plan was to discourage development on these types of fragile lands and to encourage protection of land with positive environmental features. We want to coordinate our environmental effects. So while I can recognize that there are a lot of good things that wind energy might give to the environment, my bigger concern at this time is the damage that it could do to the structure of Shawnee County, our grounds, our native stone, our prairie grass, scenic routes. There are other things that I think that we have to consider other than just the energy that is produced. New development can cause issues with drainage and water retention, and then that can have an impact on surrounding parcels. The comprehensive plan wanted us instead to focus on parks and rec, scenic overlooks, wildlife, and protecting agricultural land. Documented in Figure 4.5 of the comprehensive plan, as of 2016, Shawnee County encompasses a total of 556 square miles, or 356 acres. Now, of that, in the unincorporated area, there's approximately 290,500 acres of developed land. And developed means anything from agricultural, parks and rec, residential, commercial, industrial. Of that total, 231,500 acres is agricultural and 42,750 acres is dedicated to residential use. While Shawnee County may, by many, be still considered agricultural, it contains a lot of residential parcels in an exurban, residential sprawl type setting throughout the county. As of the writing of the comprehensive plan, if unincorporated Shawnee County were a city, it would be the 11th largest city in the state of Kansas. Residential development is the second largest land use by total land area. At the writing of this report, I did have numbers run and updated because 2016, 2018 are quite some time ago. I asked our GIS mapping department to help me out with updated numbers. At the writing of this report, there are 13,915 parcels in unincorporated Shawnee County that are less than 3 acres in size. In comparison, there are only 31 parcels that are 320 acres in size, and an additional 74 parcels that are somewhere between 200 and 320 acres in size. We are a very dense community. While in 1990s, platted subdivisions were common, in more modern times, what we see are the unincorporated area being divided up into exempt parcels, which means it has to meet the 3-acre minimum and 200 feet of frontage. It's not that hard if you fall outside of the 3-mile limit to find a large farm that has been divided up and being sold off. We issue building permits every week to some of those parcels that have been divided up. The sprawl has not stopped. It will continue, and it is my belief that that continues to be the goal of Shawnee County, to allow that kind of residential sprawl and development, because that is what identifies with Shawnee County. Urbanization. Shawnee County is deemed an urban county, as I mentioned at the outset of the meeting. As set forth in KSA 12354, Shawnee County is designated as an urban area as authorized by the Kansas Constitution. Furthermore, in 2004, Shawnee County chartered itself out of General Planning and Zoning Laws, or Chapter 12, and instead Shawnee County operates under planning and zoning laws for counties designated as urban counties. We are an urban county. Airports. We have 2 airports located in Shawnee County under the Metropolitan Topeka Airport Authority. We have Forbes Field and Topeka Regional Airport, as well as the Philip Billard Municipal Airport. I'm aware of at least one privately owned airstrip that is along several homes. There could be other privately owned airstrips. The City of Topeka Municipal Code sets regulations through ordinance in regards to the location of structures and objects within a certain vicinity of those airports, and it restricts that airspace that's required for safe flight of aircrafts and landing and taking off at the airport. So we have to make sure that we're protecting that airspace. I have had communications with the airport staff. While they didn't necessarily have specific issues with solar farms, they were concerned with wind farms. They didn't give me other specific comments. I did contact them back, but they have a lot of stuff going on right now, and they were not able to communicate back with me in regards to those hazard airspaces and height of turbines. There's a thing in the state of Kansas called the Tallgrass Heartland Moratorium. Through the center of Kansas is this thing called the Flint Hills, and we are an introduction to the Flint Hills. Shawnee County actually has a portion of our county inside the Tallgrass Heartland moratorium. This moratorium was put into place in 2004 by former Governor Kathleen Sebelius, where she declared that a moratorium on parts of the Flint Hills was necessary to protect that Flint Hills. In 2011, former Governor Sam Brownback expanded the protection area and named it the Tallgrass Heartland. In 2020, Governor Laura Kelly reaffirmed the moratorium, proclaiming that it helps conserve Kansas's unique prairie ecosystem. As I mentioned, part of that moratorium does fall within Shawnee County. It's a triangular portion on the western edge from Dover over in between a couple of our highways. Add to that, we have the Native Stone Scenic Byway. It runs in part along K4 and K99, along the Mission and Mill Creek valleys in Shawnee and Wabaunsee counties. In Shawnee County, it runs from Dover east to Auburn Road. It's an area that's known for immense beauty and history, historic native limestone buildings, natural rock formations, landmarks, and then, of course, the Flint Hills. In addition, Shawnee County has more than 75 entries on the National Register of Historic Places. While a lot of those do fall within city limits, other landmarks do fall within Auburn, Barryton, Dover, Silver Lake, Tecumseh, Wakarusa, Willard, and other unincorporated areas. My next consideration was the financial support to farmers and landowners. While I do believe it's important to farmers and landowners to be able to utilize their property in a mechanism for the way that they would like, you also have to balance that with the people surrounding you and the greater good of the community at large. While landowners could enter a lease for a wind farm and receive good compensation that is good for their family and helps support them and their family, there are other neighbors that it would harm who will not receive that compensation. To many, the potential income from a wind farm could be an investment in their future, and I recognize that. One question raised, though, is whether or not the farmer or the landowner lives on the land where that wind turbine is going to be located. There are a lot of farms all over the United States where the farmer doesn't live on the farm, and so they may be willing to lease the land of their farm because they're not going to be living there and witnessing and experiencing the wind turbine itself. Another concern I had was decommissioning. I think that a lot of research needs to happen to identify key topics on decommissioning. If wind farms were to be allowed, individual projects would need to identify a specific plan to decommission. When would equipment be removed? Where would it be taken for disposal? What would restoring the landowner's property look like? Would the original decommissioning plan need to be reviewed and updated over the course of a permit? How much does the decommissioning cost? Who's responsible for paying for those costs? And what happens if a wind farm comes in and applies and puts up the wind turbines and then sells to somebody else? How does that decommissioning plan or bond or the responsibility transfer? Should there be a requirement if a wind farm is not producing a certain amount of output or has not been operating for a specific period of time? Should they be forced to decommission early? Do we have the ability to shut down a wind farm early? Next thing that I considered was a bond. Bonds can be required not only for future damage, equipment failure, decommissioning. I've also heard of bonds on things like vegetation. They can't relieve the bond until vegetation is at a certain level or production. That may not be as applicable for wind farms, but it would be applicable for solar farms. How is the value of equipment determined? Is there a cost for depreciation or inflation? Does the bond need to be reissued every few years? Are there requirements for proof of payment? What happens if they default on that? And then again, what happens if the original applicant sells to another company? Next thing I considered was payment in lieu of taxes. As many of you are probably aware, KSA 79201 11th grants a 10-year exemption from property taxes after the construction and installation of a property. Companies are a lot of times willing to make one-time or annual payments that are called payment in lieu of taxes that can help make up for the loss of taxation. How to determine what that value should be is another question. How do we determine what the loss is or what the property loss is? Another thing that I had heard at a meeting that involves the Douglas County solar farms had to do with the fact that maybe you can still tax the property itself that maybe was before ag. Could that be converted to commercial? That's a question that we would want to know. Can we convert that and still tax the property? Is it just the equipment that's put that is exempt? I think that there's more information that would be needed on that. Again, I want to make the comment that there are a lot of arguments that one could make for or against wind farms that are not addressed, and I am well aware of that. This is not a complete cessation of all of the things that we have to take into consideration. This is what we have to consider for Shawnee County, though. My recommendation at this point, my findings: a comprehensive review of the existing conditions, characteristics of the county, and suitability of the use has been done. Preserving natural, historic, and rural landscapes of Shawnee County, maintaining agricultural farm ground and natural environmental constraints, and protecting the airspace and hazard zones are all priorities of the comprehensive plan. Protecting the floodplain is a priority of the comprehensive plan and of the Shawnee County floodplain management regulations. Protecting existing patterns of residential growth and development is a priority of the comprehensive plan and of the Shawnee County zoning regulations. We are an urban county. Protecting the health, welfare, and general well-being of the citizens of Shawnee County is a priority of Shawnee County and the Shawnee County zoning regulations. As such, the planning department, the planning staff, myself, Joni, as the planning director, finds that commercial utility scale wind energy conversion systems and projects do not comply with Shawnee County's priorities and goals at this time. I also find that the limited community scale wind energy conversion systems and projects also do not comply with Shawnee County's priorities and goals at this time.
Thank you, Joni.
Oh, hold on. Oh. Not done yet, Tyler. You tired of listening to me speak? I'm over my 4 minutes. Yes, I'm well over. The planning staff recommends that based on the findings and considerations in the staff report, the Planning Commission should recommend approval of a ban prohibiting commercial utility scale wind energy conversion systems and projects, and that you recommend approval of a ban prohibiting limited community scale wind energy conversion systems and projects. Now, I want to notate once again that this doesn't consider the personal small scale, and I think that my opinion would be that not necessarily that you vote to ban those today, but that you should consider whether or not a moratorium would be necessary, or at least the fact that we do need to set regulations if you allow for personal wind systems, because there are concerns that I have. And that would be the same as documented throughout. And now I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Joni. Thank you for your research, and thank you, staff, for the research that you've done. I know this has been a monumental undertaking for your department with the 3 people that you have, so appreciate that and your recommendation. So, as Joni pointed out, I think the comments that will be most meaningful are not only if you feel wind energy is good or bad, but how that applies specifically to Shawnee County. So we're here to think about Shawnee County mainly. So with that, we'll get started.
Good evening, Chairman Timbrink. I want to commend Joni as well for this report. It's pretty comprehensive. But my name is Eli May. I'm a lifetime resident of Auburn Township. I grew up on 8200 block of Southwest Crawford, and I'm building a house now, 7925 Southwest Urish in Auburn. I went to Mission Valley. I'm a Hick. I love the above energy kind of guy. But after graduating K-State in engineering, I spent several years working for a wind turbine manufacturer, the large scale, the 5 megawatt, 160 meters, the super large ones. But since then, I moved home and I'm building a house now, like I mentioned. Now in Topeka, I work for Cook, Flat, and Strobel. And in the past, they've done work for Nemaha, Marshall, Washington counties. And since joining them, I did work for Republic County on wind farms in those counties. The High Banks Wind Farm, I was responsible for decommissioning analysis, and I have a lot to say. The time will fail, obviously, but there's a lot of details that I could personally address, and so I felt a responsibility to come here, even though I'm a busy guy and I'm missing the Washburn Roll Band banquet, for example. But I understand the concerns and emotions of a lot of people, and but also I've worked on the R&D side of a large turbine manufacturer, and I promised you all of the issues, concerns that were mentioned in the report, as well as by members earlier today, are researched in depth by the manufacturers. They're already permitted. In other jurisdictions, there's all kinds of regulations, and at least from an OEM standpoint, they are well placed to address those concerns. But for Topeka specifically, I wanted to talk about economic development and why I would think it's a credible missed opportunity, mostly because it sends a bad signal to companies that would want to come to Topeka or Shawnee County. And this only covers the county, but if you wanted to come to Topeka, and the Joint Economic Development Organization is speaking, saying that Topeka is okay with wind, the county is against it. That sends a mixed signal, and they're going to move somewhere else. So I would be an advocate of aligning through the Joint Economic Development Organization, and as well as with Momentum 2027, and would be in favor of like a 3-year moratorium where we have time to research that in lieu, under that program that's existing. As I said, my company here, based in Topeka, provides these services to other counties. I don't speak for my company, but personally, I would be honored to provide services to safeguard Shawnee County from the developers that cause problems that have already been mentioned, and with regards to the personal, large-scale or on-site for industrial or otherwise. I would volunteer to participate in that discussion, provide any kind of input as a member of the public. I feel like I have a lot to add there. And I could go on and on in depth to the technical aspects. I mean, the floodplain is governed by FEMA, for example, or other federal regulations, and airports are governed by FAA. Those are existing permitting processes that anything like this would have to go through. But I'll just stop with that. I'm in favor of a temporary moratorium. And this ban is not permanent, as you say, but it would send a bad signal. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, 4 minutes? All right. We must be addressing the climate impact of releasing additional CO2 from coal or oil or CO2 equivalent gases like methane, which is literally natural gas. Methane holds a global warming potential, which is a term meaning equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide, of 85 over 20 years, or a global warming potential of 32 over 100 years, because it breaks down over a shorter time. This means that methane holds 85 times more greenhouse gases in a ton of methane over a ton of carbon. Although methane only lingers fully in the atmosphere for about 12 years before it starts breaking down into smaller molecules in the atmosphere, comparatively to carbon dioxide that can last hundreds to thousands of years. That being said, having a GWP of 32 times that of carbon dioxide over 100 years is something to take incredibly seriously. We must get away from burning methane or natural gas as soon as possible to mitigate heating effects. So, with all of that being said, I went walking around Shawnee County. Over the course of this last week, I knocked on about 80 doors, spoke to about 70 people, and gathered 50 signatures. Meaning, with no software aiding me in choosing what doors I knocked on, the vast majority of people that I talked to agreed with me, ignoring the folks that didn't speak English, ignoring the individuals that didn't believe in signing petitions. 50 of those 70 people, or 71% of the individuals that I talked to, agreed with me, and this is how I phrased it to them. Shawnee County is moving forward with banning wind farms and solar arrays from operating within Shawnee County. Public comment was given, and there were some legitimate concerns. Individuals were worried about neighbors signing leases to wind farm or solar array companies and perhaps having their property values lowered without the ability to provide any input. I think it can be written into the regulations to mandate expressed written consent from adjacent property owners before operation of a wind farm or solar array on a property. There were concerns about the impact of wind turbines on local bird populations. I think it would be reasonable to mandate a wildlife study to be administered by the corporation prior to approval. A quick aside, outside of the script from my petition, the American Bird Conservancy puts the number of birds killed by wind turbines in the United States at around 681,000 birds a year. If you compare that to the amount of birds killed by outdoor cats, which is 2.4 billion, this number seems quite trivial. In fact, it's 0.02%, or 0.02 of 1% the amount killed by cats. So if these people really cared about birds, they would be working harder to remove cats from outdoors rather than wind turbines. Especially when data shows that the environmental impact of climate change on migratory patterns of birds, wildfires, sea level rise, and general ecological collapse of certain environments, the damage to bird populations by wind turbines is quite insignificant in the short term compared to the long term. Back to my last point in my petition script. Several people worried about the ecological impact to the environment, including the water table and potential for future land use. This study can also be written into the regulations. When presented with these high bars of regulation to meet, if a company is able to meet these criteria, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to operate within Shawnee County. And when I presented these ideas to the vast majority of people I talked to, agreed that my petition was reasonable. Commissioners, you are tasked with setting the regulations for the county that I live in. Climate change is real. It is human-driven. The electrification of our economy is moving forward with or without us, and it is on your shoulders not only to protect us from these impending dangers, but also to carry us forward through these challenges. I'm not asking for you to grease the wheels and let any old corporation stomp all over the rights of Shawnee County citizens. But for the love of this country, for my children, for your grandchildren, don't let your legacy be the red tape that damned us all. Thank you. I have all the signatures for my petition here. I wasn't able to get copies. I work 60-hour work weeks and I got 2 kids. But I have it here. You guys can have it. I got pictures of it. I can email it to you, whatever you need.
You can email it to me.
Hi, thank you so much for your comprehensive study and the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Linnell Griffith, and I live in Topeka. So we've briefly talked about many ways that industrial wind and solar can be harmful to the environment, such as the disposal of the complexes, potentially hitting the water tables and disrupting the water. And what if a solar complex catches on fire? I burn pasture, and that would be a horrible danger knowing there was a solar complex near me, because there would be a great risk of that catching on fire. There may be, I've heard of health risks to humans and animals because of the vibrations that is created in the ground by the wind turbines. That type of research takes more time, so I'm not going to get into that. But certainly when somebody has ill health, when something like this goes up, you have to look into it. I'm just saying I can't comprehensively say that's a definite thing, because health problems can be hard to figure out, but certainly we need to consider that. We have seen that the turbines kill wildlife, migratory birds, yes, cats do too, and even eagles, and that is a concern. Perhaps there could be problems with the weather, with the turbines making the clouds, pushing rain clouds away. Again, I can't prove that, but it seems plausible. and certainly all the heat of the solar panels rising, could that influence tornadic activity? I don't know. But I do know that property taxes, or I'm sorry, that property values are often decreased when they're near these. So I can't prove all these things that I've mentioned, although I've seen evidence of it, but I can say let's continue to use common sense about this. And my big thing is food is so expensive. Going to the grocery store is rough, and the more agricultural and ranch land that we put out of commission, the rougher spot we're putting ourselves in. We must be food independent. We can't lose more and more of our food producing land to energy that is not as efficient and is more expensive. There's a real concern too if we have wind and solar complexes, returning them to ag and ranch land, because we have these huge concrete foundations, and of course the disposal of the complexes themselves, of the solar panels and wind turbines, would be a real headache, as has been mentioned. Then there's the threat of eminent domain, as new transmission lines are needed for huge complexes. And I want to come back to private property rights. Yes, do what you want to with your private property, so far as it does not harm your neighbor. And we have seen much potential in these complexes harming our neighbor, and even with the real threat of eminent domain. So thank you for your time.
Hello again. Excuse me. Mark Galbraith, speaking about wind this time. I just want to say that I'm opposed to an outright ban on wind development, solar scale or utility scale wind development in Shawnee County. And I hope tonight you'll vote no on that proposal, and that you'll come back with a proposal for a moratorium on wind, so that you have more time to study this issue. It seems to me that to vote no on a ban tonight would be short-sighted, premature. We haven't, I don't believe, had a comprehensive study done to determine if wind wouldn't work somewhere in Shawnee County. I appreciate all the work that the director and her staff have put into the study they did, but I don't think that's comprehensive. I don't remember any talk about bringing in environmental scientists or maybe even engineers to put that study together. Even the director mentioned that there was need to do further research in some areas that she and her staff looked into. I think that's true. We do need more research, and that's what we should do. I also say that because just thinking of the survey again and the numbers coming in for the survey, I think it's pretty true to say that they came in at about half and half almost, those who support and those who oppose. So if we're pretty close to 50% of Shawnee County supporting wind, it just seems very premature to vote for a ban on that. Wind is a viable energy alternative, and again, the most important, wind, you can generate energy using wind for quite a bit less money than you can using fossil fuels. But again, the most important point is you can generate energy and electricity from wind without burning any fossil fuels. And that's what scientists around the world are telling us. If we want to stop heating our planet, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. How can we close the door on that without taking a deeper more comprehensive look. You don't need me to suggest models for you to use, but the Nature Conservancy has a model that they call, let me look it up real quick over here. It's called Siting Renewables Right, a tool that counties and other entities can look at to determine whether or not they can actually site renewables, and to do it in a way that's responsible. It's the Nature Conservancy. They're very interesting in conserving nature and natural resources throughout the country. I think it's a tool worth looking at anyway. As Eli mentioned, there are a number of counties that have already written regulations regarding wind. Is that my signal? No? Okay.
You have a little bit more. Yep.
Okay. And I'm fairly certain that Kingman, Ford, Republic, Nemaha, and perhaps other counties in Kansas have already developed regulations regarding industrial scale wind energy. And I believe those are thought to be pretty stringent regulations, safe regulations, but also regulations written that would not tend to discourage development. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. I'm Representative Carrie Barth for House District 5. I live in Douglas County, Baldwin City, Kansas address. Thank you so much for the one-year moratorium on the solar. I do agree with a ban on wind. Some of the concerns that Joni mentioned I agree with are true concerns. When you look at regulations on the industries of oil and gas, and there are a ton of regulations. Not only that, FEMA has regulations, SEMA, which is the state level of FEMA, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the EPA. However, I've called every single one of those entities myself personally, and there are zero remediation and regulations for wind or solar. So I think it's extremely important to know there is nothing protecting Kansans or any state that has implemented this at all. Which again goes back to the study that I proposed. That would have been a comprehensive study that looked at wind and solar around the health effects. It also looked at 345 volt commission, or 345 kilovolt transmission lines, as well as hydrogen hubs, which is a new type of energy source that is trying to go forward. I want to mention that Harvey County did use the lack of this comprehensive study as the reason why their planning commission banned wind in their county, so it's something as a tool that you guys can use as well. Also, Wabinci versus Zimmerman is a court case that upheld a county who also banned wind in their county in Kansas. So, there's some other things that you guys can use as some of the reasons why you too can enforce a ban here in Shawnee County. When you look at the rural areas that are where you would look at putting wind or even solar, you're really impacting the folks, and the folks that you need to listen to are the ones who be most greatly impacted with these being next to their houses. I live in a rural area. It's a real concern with the health, the safety, property values, everything that everybody else has mentioned as well. You talk about the wind turbines and some of the disturbances they have. So I work with the Colonel Marshall at the state of Kansas. He works for the Adjutant General for Kansas. And you talk about Forbes Field. It messes up the radar on these highly trained flights and these airplanes, where it messes up their radar so they cannot see, and which is really important and a national security risk with low flight patterns with the aircraft. Not only that, it messes up internet, messes up people with TV. I've actually traveled to some of these counties, like Marshall County, for example, that has wind turbines. I have personally met with the landowner where the wind turbine blade broke and went onto his land. I've met the guy who lives in the neighboring county where the county that was next to him had wind turbines and the county beside him did not. I've seen the destruction of the roads personally myself. And the wind company will not fix them. They blame the contractor that the wind company actually hired. They destroyed a man's fence. That's about $6,000 worth of damage. I've seen the letters back and forth from the attorney for the wind company, and they will not reimburse this individual. So the concerns are not only hearsay, they're actually true. There's concerns around the water. We're in a part of Kansas that has shallower aquifers, and if you're concerned about the long-term use of our water, not just energy, Kansas has a shallower aquifer. A lot of our bases, sometimes even in Douglas County where I'm at, can hit pretty low. You can start even almost at 10 feet. You might be at 60 feet, 70 feet. Western Kansas has more like 200 to 300 feet aquifer bases. When you get down to the depth of wind turbines, they pile drive down in the ground to put these piers in there. You actually are piercing the ground that goes into the aquifers. The constant vibrations of these turbines are causing sediment. I've talked to people in Canada, I've talked to people in Illinois who have similar characteristics of these aquifers being shallow. And so we face the same risk of having carcinogenic materials in our water sources, permanently ruining them for anyone to not only drink, but you can't even wash your clothes or take a bath. So there are numerous, I could talk forever. I've actually immersed myself in this deeply. I did not want to be a part of this, but I have constituents that have brought this to my attention. I agree that we should all be listening to those folks that are most greatly impacted. So thank you so much. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Karine Kane. I've been a Topeka resident living in southwest Shawnee County all of my life. I've been living just south of Auburn in the country for the last 31 years. My husband and I both are professional therapists in Topeka, and I also operate a nonprofit equine rescue on our property. I began doing a lot of research after the survey went out and began reading and getting my hands on anything I could about both wind and solar installations. I concluded without a doubt that as for Shawnee County, there should be a ban on both of these. I strongly applaud you all for all of your research, your hours, your dedication to providing what you have tonight, and I also received that in an email as well. For those reasons, I strongly support a ban on the installation of wind towers, as well as I support the moratorium on solar, and I hope that eventually leads to a ban on solar. About one of the first meetings we attended, we were tasked with trying to come up, we wanted to have 1,000 petitions to be able to provide to you all from folks in our community. We became passionate as a community of people that live on our land, love our land, and have our hearts in our land around this area in Shawnee County. We don't have millions or billions of dollars backing us, but what we do have is a lot of hardworking people that were willing to go door knocking, talk to people at shopping malls, churches, in our employment areas, and others that we know to educate them about what we were finding out of the dangers of both turbines and solar. We feel that we have concluded with that 1,000 petition ban. We've provided that to you, and we've achieved our goal of that. I'd also like to read you a letter that I believe all of you have received that is from our Shawnee County residents. We want you to know that we appreciate all that you have done for us and the role that you play for us. We rely and depend on you to make informed decisions. Many who have signed these petitions were not able to attend this public hearing, but would like to have their voice heard that they are against industrial wind and solar complexes in Shawnee County. So for every one of us here, there are dozens that are not here tonight that have signed petitions. There are also, I might add, dozens more that do not support them, but for whatever reason, were not comfortable signing a petition to have their name on that. We are presenting an additional 100 signed petitions tonight to be added to our previous total of 1,108 to bring the grand total 1,208 against industrial wind and 1,189 against industrial solar. This covers approximately 30,098 acres belonging to property owners in Shawnee County. I would like to leave you with this as well. A friend of mine who lives in Waverly lives across from one of the first industrial wind turbines that they have put, which are approximately half of the height that ours would be if they were to be put up in Shawnee County. What she told me the other day really hit home. I couldn't believe it. She basically said that they were out in an evening and the industrial turbines had been shut off for whatever reason. They were finally able to hear, which they haven't heard for years since they've been shut off. They were able to hear the birds, the frogs, the country noises that we all look forward to when we choose to live in the country or visit the country. They had realized that that had become silent in their ears. And I would just like to say thank you for your consideration and listening to us. I'll be passing this out to you as far as our petitions. And this also for each of you, which does show you who has signed these petitions.
Hi, I'm Justine Grieve. I live at 2424 Southwest 26th Drive in Topeka. I'm here today because I apparently missed the hearing on utility scale coal-fired power plants or oil or natural gas, fossil fuels. But that's what we're using every day, and we're not questioning it. We're not talking about banning it. And I get that because we all want to power our society. But we know that burning fossil fuels is contributing to climate change. We know that it has harmful effects on human health. We have a potential solution here with wind and solar. It's the best we have right now in terms of alternatives, and it doesn't make sense to ban that when we're just continuing to allow the clearly harmful status quo. We can establish regulations that take into consideration most of your concerns, getting consent from nearby landowners, making sure we're not building in a floodplain or an area that experts have determined is not suitable to build on. But even if we couldn't put wind turbines on 99% of the unincorporated land in Shawnee County, that doesn't mean we should ban it on the remaining 1%. That piece of suitable land might be the perfect place for a wind farm that could help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Also, I would just like to say I really take exception to the idea that renewable energy is not a priority for Shawnee County. I wasn't asked about that. I don't feel like the public has really necessarily had input into establishing what our priorities are. I'm a member of the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board, which advises the City Council on issues related to sustainability, and we exist because the city of Topeka has determined that sustainability is a priority for it. I realize that's not the same as unincorporated Shawnee County, but there's a lot of overlap between the people who live in those areas and their interests and priorities. Finally, you mentioned that if things were to change, your recommendation might change. Laws can change, yes, of course, but a ban makes that difficult. It's far too extreme. We don't need to ban anything, especially when it is the best alternative we have to a system that we know is harmful. Thank you.
So, good evening. Vicki Arnett, League of Women Voters. I live at 1110 Southwest Medford in Topeka. I won't repeat anything that I said earlier, except that the League is about a 200-member organization in Topeka, and I have been asked to speak on behalf of those members. So I would repeat that the League is opposed to banning utility-scale wind development. And for many of the reasons that you've heard tonight, if there is a chance for an opportunity to develop wind as an alternative in Shawnee County, I think you should take it, and a ban is the wrong way to go. I appreciate all of your service, and as leaders in Shawnee County, I feel like you have a responsibility to the future. And the future is about alternative energy. And I encourage you to not support the ban. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. Karma Lockney. I live and work in the Auburn community. I grew up outside of Assaria, Kansas on a farm. I moved to this area after I graduated from veterinary school. The first half of my life I dedicated to chasing my dream to become a veterinarian. After achieving that goal, I set my sights on my next goal, finding my own piece of land in the country to raise my children the way I was raised. We purchased acreage outside of Auburn 4 years ago and started building a house on the property a year and a half ago. My dream turned into a nightmare last July. While driving out to work on our house, we noticed a device in the ditch by the neighbor's property. This is what the device looks like, placed in the ditch in case you happen to see any in your area. The date is on the one photo. This is a close-up of the other photo. There was a phone number on it, so I called the number. The person that answered the phone told me the device was set there to monitor the birds in the area for a wind turbine company. Remember, this is July. How active are birds in the hottest part of the summer for 2 weeks? Upon talking to the landowners around us who do not live on the land, we found out that more than one had signed a lease to the wind turbine company. We then discussed what we should do now that we are in the middle of building a house that would be located amongst these monstrosities. The first thought was to sell and move to a neighboring county where wind turbines have been banned and taxes are cheaper. The thought of wind turbines next to our place is devastating for many reasons. First of all, we have worked our entire lives for this place so we could enjoy the peace and quiet. We have a wonderful view on top of our hill of the natural beauty from our property. We grew up in the country. Tall buildings, large power poles, lights, and noise do not belong in the country. I want to see the stars at night, not blinking lights. Second, if this were to happen to our property, the property value and that of our neighbors would plummet, but I doubt the county would adjust the value of our homes to reflect that. Auburn is just outside of Topeka, and the area is increasing in developments. No one wants to live next to one of these. Property taxes are sky high in this county already and would need to be increased for the township to try and maintain the roads as these structures are built. Our township is already stretched thin. There is property in our community selling for $10,000 an acre. Allowing these in would tank the value in our area for what? Just to allow an outside company to come in and make money while not paying any taxes? I know I have focused on the wind leases, but these companies have the ability to sell their lease to industrial solar companies. Coming from a family of generations of farmers, we need farmland to feed people. Covering it with solar panels that ruin the ground beneath it is not green. The only thing green about either of these is the money the companies get from the government subsidies. We're pleased that you're recommending a ban on industrial wind turbines and would like to see you ban industrial solar too. I am not against homeowners having their own solar panels on their house. If you want one, put it on your house. But we do not need to destroy acres of farmland when Kansas is already overproducing electricity and selling it out of state, not lowering our electric bills in Kansas. Please listen to the residents in your county. Please do not open the door and let the fox in the hen house, no matter how cute it appears. Nothing good will come when the fox gets in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Riley again. I'm a resident here at Topeka. Did you guys know that we're a part of an energy grid, and all the energy that we produce goes into a large pool, and all of the states give and take from that energy pool at all times? Sometimes there is a misnomer that energy produced by solar or wind is sold off to another state, and that's just factually inaccurate, and you can double check that for yourselves. Director Joni, has given us a really great outline here. I just find it really interesting that the Board of County Commissioners gave the task to draft consideration for wind regulation, and the Planning Department doesn't come back with regulation recommendations. They're recommending a ban. All of these things here, all of these challenges are the outlines to the start of the regulations that we need you guys to put into place. That's your job and role, and we would appreciate you to take these concerns in so that we can properly do wind in Shawnee County. As another gentleman pointed out, if that's 1%, then, or someone else said, if that's 1%, then that's 1%. There's already regulations around airports and floodplains. These are arguments that aren't applicable because the wind companies already have to adhere to them. They already have to. FEMA makes sure of that. FAA that regulates the airports already makes sure of that. They're not going to be put next to them because they can't. We already have communities around Kansas that have figured out strict policies. We can look toward them, we can work with them to learn from those policies. The roads issues. Unincorporated Shawnee County has how many thousands of tons of concrete brought into it for the Walmart distribution center, and I don't hear any concerns about that, or Target distribution center. I see wind turbines driven on I-70 and 470 all the time. They're being driven through our communities anyways. So that's a poor argument as well. I live in a floodplain. FEMA recommended to Shawnee County and to the city of Topeka to institute levees, and there has been no, along the Shunga, the main part of the drainage and flood problem, and no action's been taken on that. So save me your tears, because today and yesterday when it rained really, really hard, I'm already having to wonder if I'm going to have to pack up my family photos of my dog and my kayak and have it by the door when I go to bed. So that... They're not going to allow people to further disrupt the floodplains. We actually have a challenge to address those that you guys aren't taking seriously anyways. So I don't see that as that valid of an argument anyway. The comprehensive plan can evolve. I hear this argument about using up farmland, and then on the other hand, I hear that it's an urban development and that we're building more and more on the city limits, and that we want to save room for that. You know, if we build new housing there, we're still going to have to take, whether it's from the coal plant or the wind farm or wherever these distribution centers for the electricity in the grid, we're still going to have to build power infrastructure to these areas out in Auburn where all this new, development is happening. Those farmers are going to be mad that there's suburbs there and new electric lines. If we as a society are going to have infrastructure and implement it, some people in certain situations aren't going to love it, but we still have to have it, and that's not an excuse for not putting proper regulations in place, especially when it is your duty and your role. Thank you.
Mike Crawford again. The comment that we're using a lot more electricity than we used to, total energy consumption has been going down in the United States per capita ever since 1970. The comment that we don't need fossil fuels, Department of Energy says that 82% of the energy produced in the country is fossil fuels. If you want to get by on 18% of the energy you've been having, that's what you're talking about. I made a trip down to Waverly Wind Farm a few months ago, and I got the wind turbine that was closest to the road. I drove a quarter mile away from it, got out of my truck. Every time the blade goes by the ground, there's noise. So my opinion is nobody will ever build a house within half a mile of a wind turbine. So that's something to think about residential development. That packet that I gave you earlier that had the Southwest Power Pool information on it, the last page of that shows you their forecast for the next week. The load in the pool goes up and down, day by day. It's right now it's about 32,000 in the day, 32,000 megawatts in the daytime, 25,000 at night. Wind has been as low as 4,000, as high as 30,000. No, I'm sorry, that's not correct. There's about 30,000 megawatts of wind installed in the Southwest Power Pool region at this point. The most it's ever made is 24,000. It's never made what it's propped up to be. So wind is a very unreliable source of energy. Thank you.
My name is Mel Adams. I live at 1115 Southwest Red Oaks Place here in Topeka. We've been here about 12 years. I was a certified financial planner in my business and for 35 years in Hayes. And so when I'm going to approach this from a little different angle. Let's say that all of a sudden that coal train that just went by here didn't go by. It didn't provide our electricity at the cheap price that we've got. And that fossil fuels was banned just like some of these people would like you to have it to be. Let's say that happened. Where would we get all of our solar panels? Where would we get all of our wind farms? 80% of it comes out of China. It goes in their pocket, not ours. It's not doing us a one red cent. We're supporting China when we go to solar farms and wind farms. That's exactly what we're doing. And if you like that, you may be speaking Chinese for too long, because that's maybe where we're headed. But follow the money. The money, 80% of this stuff comes out of China. The cobalt, we got 15% of it, I think. They've got 80% of it to make these solar panels. They're getting rich off of us if we do all these other things that some of these people want us to do. But if we use our head and use our oil, we've got plenty of oil, plenty of coal. We're Saudi Arabia of the world in oil and coal. And we use our head, and instead of our rear or something else, I don't know what we're using, but anyway, we'd be much better off. Because I remember one guy said it 50 years ago, they talked about global warming. No, they didn't. They talked about global ice age. Al Gore was going around telling us about the ice age was coming in the 70s. I remember it when I was growing up. We went through that age as a phase, the religion. Then they turned around, it had to be global warming. Well, that didn't work because global warming didn't just quite pan out. So now they had to change it to global change or climate change. Now, obviously, if you're a Kansan, you know that the climate changes every day. So that's no big deal. The climate is always changing. That's just the way it is. But it doesn't mean the end of the world is coming. Our planet was made to survive this stuff, and it was made to use it. And that's what the Bible talks about. We are to subdue the earth and not to be succumb to it. Thank you for all your work.
Hello, everybody. Jackson Woods, 1195 Southwest Mulvane in Topeka. I appreciate everybody that's come up and spoke today, and I especially appreciate the report from the planning director. It's very well written. I just disagree with the conclusion. I agree with what the previous speakers against the ban have said. A moratorium might make sense. A ban is sending the wrong signal. As we have already said, there's a permitting process in place that I think can handle this if we haven't had any applications. It's not like there's a volume of one every meeting, even. Somebody brought up the Canadian pile driving issue. That's not applicable to Kansas to my knowledge because that was Kettle Point black shale, and that is known to contain uranium and arsenic. I don't think Shawnee County bedrock is known to contain that. I could be wrong. It was brought up that the energy costs of these turbines don't exceed what they produce, but that's not true. Over the life cycle of wind turbines, it's a net positive for energy. There's a measure of that. It's called life cycle assessment. The extra capacity yes, we make a lot of energy, but we want to transition away from the existing energy sources of coal and natural gas towards renewable energy. And you kind of need a lot of capacity in different places because not all of it's going to be working all the time. So having it decentralized is to our advantage. Per capita energy consumption is going down, that's true, but our total energy consumption is staying constant or increasing. We will still need this energy. If Shawnee County says not here, then that's just passing the problem of our necessary energy generation and consumption elsewhere. 1,000 feet is enough for most wind turbine systems to reduce volume to less than 40 decibels. That could be a regulation right there for you. 1,000 feet can't be within an active residence. That's 40 decibels is the equivalent of the average volume level of a home. Since you brought up sprawl, it should be noted that building out is not financially sustainable for infrastructure purposes. We need to be building up, not out. Building out just makes the cost per mile of infrastructure increase. A ban is certainly too far, and I've heard arguments that can make me think that a moratorium may be needed, but reasonable regulations are possible. I think you can do it. We just need to have the will to get it done. Thank you.
We're not going to accept second comments until all people have the opportunity to have first. Make sure and sign your name also on the list. Okay.
Yep. Hi, guys. I'm Frank Robinson. I'm not very good at doing this, but I can tell you I own multiple properties in Shawnee County. I've built over 40 homes in Shawnee County. And right now I put a $500,000 house on a $500,000 worth of land, and I got 11 leases surrounding me. The closest lease to my house, or we plan to have my kids build a house, or maybe my grandkids, is 500 feet from my house. Never knew nothing about it until I seen the bird monitors in the ditch. And I 100% support the ban of wind turbines and industrial solar. Thank you, guys.
Just one more thing. Madam Director, I do appreciate and thank you and your staff for all the wonderful information you've given us tonight, and I feel a whole lot better about the prospect of not having to deal with these massive wind farms in our neighborhood. Now, I grew up in western Kansas, and I still have a lot of childhood friends that farm and ranch out there, and when they first came to them with the proposal for these farms, their economic situation was not good because farming is not easy. And they jumped on it, and now they hate it. They go, what am I going to do? You know, it's money that I get because I can't farm the way I used to. And they got a few roads and bridges out of the deal, but they really, every time they step out their back door and they look at the land that they grew up on and they see those monstrosities, and they just hate it. And but again, I feel a whole lot better knowing that you have done your research and that things are going to be good. And you know, the way society is today, when you say you want to ban something, people start freaking out. Well, you know, we banned lead products in paints and gasoline. We banned a lot of things that turned out to be okay. Laws are written, laws can be changed, and that's part of our American government. And I just lost my train of thought. It's been a long day, but anyway, yeah, we do need to do something. I'll be the first to admit that. But when you threw out the numbers of that, 45% said that they were okay with it, and 51% said that they weren't. And those aren't really great numbers, but I saw an article the other day about a collective ignorance, and people don't like that word, but I deal with high school students in ignorance every day, and it's my job to change that. Ignorant does not mean stupid, it just means you don't know. okay? And so that's my job to try and make people know. And that's the purpose of these forums, is to make people more aware. And I think we've made a pretty good step in that direction tonight. So I appreciate all of your time and all of your effort and everybody who's here supporting where we live. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Wanda Caberline. I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and I just want to give everyone a thought. I have some property that was offered to me for lease, and I was thinking, great, I'm going to have money and I won't have to worry about retirement. But I'm so glad that I found out some things and did them, and the research that you did also found out it matches up with what I found out. And I guess the most important question is, if you are for an industrial wind farm or solar farm, would you mind living right next to it? Because that's what we're talking about, is health issues, things that aren't normal. If you feel that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh all the time, your body is not used to that. It just puts you out of balance. We had the railroad go by tonight, and you hear the rumble, but that goes away. But the whoosh, whoosh, and the shaking of the house all the time, that's not good for you. And if you don't mind living next to it, that's good. But if you're next to it, that might affect your property. And thank you very much.
Are we entertaining second speakers?
I would just make sure that there aren't
we still have
firsts.
more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your service. I am on the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board. My name is Kelly Majorkirth. I live at 3525 Southwest Avalon Lane. I have a lot of thoughts right now that are extremely unorganized, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, and I'm just going to skip straight through to the end of everything that I'm thinking at the moment. It's true that laws are written and laws can be changed, but a ban will make it very difficult, if not impossible, to go back and redo some other path. It is my opinion that a ban in this circumstance is too extreme, and that potentially a moratorium would be a more appropriate avenue to take. Lots of thoughts. This is an extreme measure for something that could use a lot more thought, a lot more input. Thank you very much.
So my name is Ron Sims. I'm a resident of Barrington, Kansas. Appreciate the opportunity to come up here and speak to you all. I came here with the intention of just trying to understand what was going on. I've never been to one of these meetings and didn't know how it was all going to work, and wasn't sure I was going to say anything, and I didn't bring anything written to present. But I did want to speak. Just a little bit of background. I have 40 years experience in the energy industry. Worked with the oil industry for a while, and worked for a local utility that does provide nuclear power, does provide solar power, does provide wind energy and coal and gas. It provides everything, and I understand that's an important part of what we need to have for energy to meet our needs across the country. But as I understand what we're looking at tonight is, what are we doing in Shawnee County? And you've got a planning committee that put together an excellent report that focuses on what do we want to do in Shawnee County. And I would encourage the Planning Commission to listen and read your report that you tasked somebody to look at. What do we want to do in Shawnee County? What's important to us? And I support both the proposals, the moratorium on solar energy and also the ban on wind energy. I know a number of people that live in the Waverly area, and I don't know anybody that's happy with the wind energy they have there. So I understand the importance of all different kinds of energy, but we're looking at Shawnee County. You have a report. I encourage you to read your report, follow those recommendations. Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to come up and speak for their first time on wind? Okay. If you've already been up to speak on wind and you'd like to come up again, now's your chance.
Thank you so much for your kindness. I'll be brief. I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to go ahead. As we're looking at fossil fuels and wind and solar, let's just remember what photosynthesis is. Okay, we have carbon dioxide, otherwise known as carbon emissions, which is fuel for plants when you have water and sunlight. And it's a beautiful recycling system by nature, and it works. And I just want us to remember that as fossil fuels get a bad rap, because they're less expensive and easier to store and more reliable. Thank you.
Yeah, Chairman Tim Rank, Eli May again, thank you. I just wanted to bring up something that hasn't been mentioned in all the other comments, but it's got me thinking. The Shawnee County plan, and I guess you would say urbanization or suburbanization, has these 3-acre lots with frontage, and it's creating these 3-acre lots along the roads and leaving a large landlocked area in between that not always has great farming capability. Family land adjacent to mine, for example, is too rocky for farming, is too hilly, and we have cattle on there. But looking to the future, if we continue to limit the use of this land to make a profit, or limit the ways that farmers can be creative to continue to live and stay on the land, then I see that as a long-term negative. The people that move out into the country on a 3-acre lot benefit from having this green space behind in this landlocked areas in the middle of the mile sections, but they're not paying for it. And there's many aging people, uncles, for example, that have to sell to the highest bidder for their retirement, and they can sell the 3-acre lots, but then they sell the landlocked sections for pennies on the dollar to family who are going to be in the same position in 20, 30 years themselves. So that's the only comment I would add. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else who would like to come up to speak tonight on the wind issue? Okay. Oh, one more.
I'll be brief. Jan Davis. I live 7/10 of a mile from Shawnee County. I live in Osage County. And thank you guys for your time. I'm on the Planning Commission in Osage County. We had 3 public hearings, and we listened to over 100 citizens every meeting speak. And 97% did not want wind or solar in Osage County. And the 3% that did want it owned property and just wanted the income from that. But there have been a couple of misconceptions, and Joni, I wanted to ask, in your research, my research was done from...
We're not able to ask questions.
Oh.
Or ask you questions
Okay.
back.
My research started in 2018, and at last count, about 2 years ago, last time I saw it, there were 22 Kansas counties that had banned wind and solar. Those that had, not all of them have zoning committees. I was shocked that half of Kansas doesn't have zoning committees in their counties. But at last count, 22 Kansas counties had banned wind and solar, and I didn't know if that number has changed since then. But, and new medical terminology is wind turbine syndrome from the health effects from living near a wind turbine. And they just don't belong in an urban environment. So the wind turbines, you guys already know this, already use about 70 to 80 gallons in each turbine. You can go to some that have been up for a few years and see all the oil leaking into the soil. And many times they will draw more off the grid than they produce. So just little misconceptions. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, that will conclude our public hearing section. Thank you for your input. At this time, we'll have discussion among the commissioners. I think it's only right that you hear from us. We've heard a lot of your comments and haven't heard much from us, but I'll start. This is a big issue, and my education and background is in economics, and I own cattle and raise cattle right now. And I live in the southwest corner of Shawnee County and own and lease land in Shawnee County. I own and lease land in Osage County and Wabunsee County also. But my understanding of commercial wind scale operations is that they need, a couple thousand acres to be efficient. I mean, you really want to offset your fixed costs in building a wind farm, so you need to generate as much power as you can from that in one area. And I know from growing up and living in southwest Shawnee County, which I think is probably one of the best areas that somebody could potentially think about wind generation. But my family's been there. I mean, I've grown up in southwest Shawnee County, and it's hard to find land to lease for cattle that's around anything bigger than a quarter section, which would be 160 acres. It's pretty tough to find that these days. When I was young, you could find a lot of quarter sections to rent. But as more population has come into the county, the tracts of land just aren't very big. So even if you look at a whole mile section of land that's 640 acres, trying to find a spot, a few mile sections together that you could build some kind of efficient wind scale, I don't think you'll be able to find it in Shawnee County. For sure not in the eastern part of the county. I mean, we have the Kansas River in the northern part of the county with a lot of flood zone. So as I see it, southwest Shawnee County would be your best option. And I spend a lot of time out there. I'm on the fire department in Auburn. There aren't big tracts of land that could accommodate something like that in our county. Wabunsee County has banned wind. Osage County has banned wind, so it's not as if you can grab some land in one of those counties and put together a big section of land for a wind farm. So that's my standpoint, and I'll open it up to hear from the other commissioners what they think.
I believe you're correct. I don't think, I'm from Southeast, and we don't have large tracts of land that would be conducive to permitting a wind farm. I am concerned about the city and the sustainability issue, and somehow we need to work with them a little bit, maybe, so that it doesn't look like we're sending mixed messages.
Yeah,
This was much harder than I thought it was going to be. You know, I tend to think one way, and everybody came out here and gave great arguments as to for and against. Some of the notes, and there goes the train, probably with the, was it with the coal or with the fuel? So just, that's ironic. I did want to ask Legislator Carey, if she would mind sending over her study. And if you could email that, and then maybe Joni can share that with all of us. I do find that rather interesting. I am with Jeanette that I think us not knowing exactly what the sustainability with Topeka Sustainability Program, what they're looking at, and possibly that disconnect from us with what you both had said is interesting. I do think that if there were certain issues with Momentum 2027, that maybe somebody would have been here to be able to provide us that information, unless they're planning to do that at the next commissioner meeting. And I do believe in, you know, climate control and all of that, and I recycle, and I try to do all those things that I'm supposed to do as a good citizen. And so my heart is torn because I hear everybody and what you said and what the majority of people here are saying, and I've read the petitions and looked over everything, but then there's that piece where you're like, but we have to save the world, and how do we do that all? And so I don't know what I'm going to do tonight, so I'm just letting you know this is how I'm feeling, and I do appreciate the study and everything that you outlined for us. I think that was phenomenal work that you and the team did, especially with the byways and the native stone, and everything was fabulous, so thank you so much for your hard work on that.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I'll echo that Joni said when she was presenting. You know, I'm not necessarily against the wind development or the solar development, but we have to look at what we think is best for Shawnee County. And, you know, I think one of the things that jumps out, you know, and Tyler touched on it there, that the statistic that we have in here, 13,915 tracts of land are 3 acres, less than 3 acres in size. You know, it's like Tyler said, hard to find those big tracts of land in Shawnee County that I feel like would be necessary for wind development in Shawnee County. Again, not against wind development. You know, I do think we do need to look at sustainability for the city. You know, different things. But as far as just being able to find a place that fits in Shawnee County, I don't see it.
I think Joni did a really good job on the staff report. Most of our staff reports are about a third this long. I think that's why it took us so long. I wanted to thank everybody that came, because obviously everybody has different opinions, and you guys were very quiet and respectful of each other, and that makes our job a little easier. Tyler wanted to throw somebody out, and I said, no, it's not going to happen tonight. That's why Rich is back there. I've been to the Waverly. I've been up by, if you drive up, we go up north a lot. When you get to Nebraska, there's a crap ton of wind farms right on the north side of the Nebraska line, and you know you're there at night because the lights are just going crazy. I feel like, to me, I kind of echo the sentiment with the land sizes. I mean, you go to some of those places, there might be 2 or 3 houses around those, where if somebody was to put one here, there could be 100 people living within 1,000 feet of them. I just don't feel that Shawnee County is a very good place for it. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Okay. we don't have any other thoughts from the commissioners, I will hear a motion.
I'll put a motion to approve the recommendation of the staff report.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the recommendation of the staff report. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And we have a second.
Josh moved and Chad seconded.
Can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
On that, based on the recommendation, it says that the planning staff recommends the planning commission seriously consider whether personal, small scale or accessory scale wind energy conversion systems are appropriate. So if we're doing the recommendation, if we vote on the recommendation that the planning staff has set forth for us, where does that doesn't necessarily include the small scale and accessory scale?
I'd say the motion that I'm doing is for that one paragraph above that.
Okay.
And so the bottom paragraph is, I looked at as more of a side note, like this is what we should do probably going forward, but it's not. I'm just doing the middle part would be what the motion was for.
Okay.
Is that what you had in mind, Jody?
Yes, correct. The main motion or the main crux of the recommendation is for the limited and commercial utility. Yeah, if you would like to read it, that's
Okay,
fine.
so my motion is to, the recommendation based on, planning staff recommends that based on these considerations, the planning commission recommends approval of banning, prohibiting commercial utility scale wind energy conversion systems and projects, and recommend approval of a ban prohibiting limited community scale wind energy conversion systems and projects.
Thank you for the
That makes sense?
clarification. Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second.
You wake over there.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
Josh Greening,
Yes.
Tyler Timbrink,
Yes.
Rosa Cavazos,
Yes.
Chad Gearhart,
Yes.
with a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission. The wind ban has been approved and will be heard by the County Commission on June 13th.
June 13th. Thank you, Jolie. The last item on the agenda is discussion of planning-related issues. Do we have those?
I have no other planning-related issues.
Okay, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.